I started playing higher stakes. I started battling with all these guys that I looked up to. And I think I was a little bit too content, a little bit too happy. And I kind of lost like my killer instinct. And I busted the main event one year. I lost like kings to aces pre. It just wasn't high enough stakes for me to like really make the right decision. And so I thought to myself, okay, like if I had a gun to my head and like I raised the stakes to be as high as I could possibly go, like would I have folded?
Today we will be chatting with high stakes MTT player Justin Saliba. In this episode, Justin reviews the mindset he has built to play and exploit the world's best players.
One thing I noticed early on at Triton is that a lot of the guys did not like being on stream. You're on day 8, you just lost $500,000 and now you have a tough river decision on stream in front of thousands of people. So I just lied to myself. I was like, okay, perfect. They don't like streams. I love streams. Put me on the stream as much as you want. Put me in the biggest spot in the world every single time. So that when I hit rock bottom, I sent him a message and I said, hey, poker's not for me. I'm gonna go get a job in engineering. I'm done with this. And he was like, give me a call. And we got on the phone and he was like, what's going on? Like talk to me. And he really walked me off the ledge, you know, and every time I'm like running bad or whatever, I always try to put in my head that like, this is part of the competition. Everybody's going to run bad in these moments. And so if I can be the person that runs bad and still works hard, still brings my A game, still believes I'm gonna win. When my opponent runs bad, he's moaning about it for 3 days. He can't stop talking about it at the table. I'm like, like people think that these high stakes pros have it all figured out. I look at those guys and I'm like, I'm gonna eat this guy alive.
Thank you guys for tuning in to what's going to be another great episode of the Mechanics of Poker podcast. Quick announcement, we have seats open for our Mechanics of Poker coaching program. If you want to work with me and Adam and have us help you make more progress in your poker career, you can apply using the link down below or go over to mechanicsofpoker.com. Without further ado, guys, enjoy this episode. Justin, you've been deep in the high roller circuit the past couple of years. You play WSOPs, Tritons, you have $1 million scores. When doing some research on you for this podcast, one word kept on coming back, which was war mode. So I like to start there. Can you explain to me what war mode is and how that looks like in practice?
Yeah, it's just kind of a trick I try to play on myself to bring my very best game. So I kind of had this thought when, you know, I had an issue early on when I started playing live. And that was that I was a little bit too happy to be there. You know, I started playing higher stakes. I started battling with all these guys that I looked up to. And I think I was a little bit too content, a little bit too happy. And I kind of lost like my killer instinct and like the real drive to like make the right decision. And I busted the main event one year. And I remember talking to friends because I lost like kings to aces pre. But the way it happens in the main event is that it just wasn't high enough stakes for me to like really make the right decision. And so I thought to myself, okay, like if I had a gun to my head and like I raised the stakes to be as high as I could possibly go, like would I have folded? Of course, right? And so then I started to really think about, all right, well, something's wrong in my preparation in the way that I'm doing this because like it doesn't mean enough for me to play my very absolute best. And that's kind of a scapegoat. It's like you get a bluff catcher on the river and you know the guy's under bluffing, but you're like, man, I've been running bad. Like, I feel less resilient. Let me just pay this one because I'm supposed to pay this one, or I should pay this one. And it's like a lazy way to play cards. And so I think that that's kind of when I started to lean into this like war mode of like, okay, when I'm at the table, it's as important as life or death for me to like play my best. It's this river decision means more to me than anything. And if I can put myself in that mindset, it helps me just play my best in big moments, which is where you kind of have to be when you're battling at the high stakes.
What are signs that you're slipping out of war mode, and how do you then get back in? Because obviously it's good, you know, to have the intention of war mode, but I would assume that sometimes, you know, you might go out of it. How do you refocus, and what are like the signs that you're out of war mode?
Yeah, so I worked with a performance coach for a little bit, and the whole goal was how can I get back in this mindset in 10 seconds at the table? And like we do like a little visualization exercise where I just like take a deep breath. I imagine my body's like starting to like glow. And then like when I open my eyes, I'm like back in this war mode, right? Like I'm back ready to play my best and be the best version of myself at the table. And there's so many signs of how to get out. Like it's so easy in long days to hop on your phone or check sports scores, look at chip stacks or look at what's up top or get distracted by all these distractions that are possible. You have to eat at the table a lot of times in these high rollers. It's easy to like start eating food and it put you in a place of like, let me chat to this guy. Like we're buddies. Like, why don't I ask him how his family is or whatever? And like, you're always going to have those moments. But I want to be able to try to get back in that mode when my decisions are most important. And can I do that quickly? I actually, like a small tangent, but I had my very first Triton. I went to Vietnam and I didn't know anybody there. Like I knew of these guys, obviously, but like I wasn't friendly with people there. It was a super like, I'm alone on this trip. And the jet lag was crazy. I was feeling not my best. And I had a good stack and it was in the mystery bounty. And I remember going up to my room on the 40-minute break and just feeling so messed up and tired. And I just like sat down for 30 minutes and it like killed me. When I went back to play, the very first hand off the deck, we were on the stream table. Now I'm in the big blind. I'm not in like the right state to play. Naza opened the cutoff. I have a close decision pre immediately. The bounties have just gotten turned on. And I end up just like blundering this hand purely because of my mindset and preparation. Like it had nothing to do, like if you gave me the hand, I wouldn't have made the mistake if I'm like my best version. So I think trying to find ways to just perform at my highest level is super important to me.
Yeah, you're talking about not necessarily something technical, right? You're talking more about the performance aspect of poker. So, like percentage-wise, how much of becoming a big winner in poker, right, a successful player, do you think is technical, and how much is other stuff? And what would the other stuff be? Obviously, you now mentioned like the performance aspect.
Yeah. When you said that, I kind of immediately thought of like, FIFA or something where you're building your own players. Like everybody's different, right? I think that for me, the technical aspect was so important to me for so many years, and I had to catch up on the performance aspect. Whereas guys that played more than me, played more live than me, had more experience, I felt like they kind of had the mindset performance stuff pretty locked down. And so like it was a bigger part of them as a player, right? As a player profile kind of. Like I always had a lot of respect for David Peters comes to mind. The guy just doesn't give anything away. He is so focused at the table. He takes 20 seconds, he checks every single time. He does, you know what I mean? He's so methodical and so good at the table. And that's a skill set that he has, right? And so I look at that and I'm like, all right, well, he's definitely not going to scorch it off. Whereas like me, like I've studied infinite hours of the game. And if I see this combo that like I could check raise turn shove river, right? Maybe if I'm a little bit fatigued, I do it 80% of the time, or maybe I just do it every time, right? And so I have these performance issues that would lead to kind of scorching off stacks a bit more often than some of these other guys. So I think that, yeah, the makeup of players are all different. But for me, I had to learn that kind of on the back end of it because I was so focused on theory early on.
Also, it also just simply due to the change of environments, I can imagine, especially if you go to Triton, which is like considered, the highest level in MTTs nowadays. So you have like the added pressure, financial, but also like camera, stream. Like you said, I think time zone difference between like a Vietnam or Jeju or something like that, huge jets, like you're fatigued. I guess also circumstances that these other guys, they're probably used to, they have a lot of experience, they probably know how to deal with that in a better way. Was that a big part? And what have you learned over the years now that you have more experience? So how do you kind of prevent that from having too big of an impact on your game?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's such a big thing. I have a hard time understanding how you can prevent it without just making the mistakes and iterating as fast as possible because it feels so difficult to prepare for what it actually is without just doing it. I think like the first time you play for $1 million it's just a different feeling. The first time you're playing at a final, like my first Triton final table was 8 of the best no limit players in the last 10 years. And like until you do that, it's really, really difficult to simulate that in your head of how you're going to react, of how you're going to feel emotionally. Is your confidence going to be fine? Or are you going to feel like I need to show them how good I am at poker because I care what Phil Ivey thinks. I care what Jason Kuhn thinks, right? And so until you go through that, I think that like there's no perfect prep. But you really do end up just, in my experience, just getting to a point where you kind of pull out what's important about this. And I think if you don't have confidence in your game. Like for me, that is my war mode. It's like, okay, well, these guys, like, they came with their families, they came with their kids, they're out having coffee in the morning and whatever. Like, I'm watching every hand on stream. So when this final table comes, I know how these guys are feeling way more than they know anything about me, right? So I have to feel like I'm in that war mode to kind of give myself that confidence to have um to have success in those moments, because it's not, I don't have an edge in experience. I don't have an edge in financial, you know what I mean? Like I don't have more money than them. I don't have more experience than them. They've been doing this longer. So like I have to find my edges differently.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable, right? Like, how do you get used to a higher stake? Well, you should, play it, right? There's
Yeah.
no shortcut. Also, I think for maybe some of the audience listening, like going also in with the expectation of, okay, well, this is probably gonna feel a bit different, right? Because I'm playing outside of my comfort zone and kind of aligning expectations accordingly. You mentioned like that you have, I think you mentioned this twice now, like that you want to show how good you are to, for example, an Ivy or a Chitwick. How does that look or translate into your play? Because I can imagine, for example, if you would put me on a table like that, I would probably feel more intimidated than anything, and I would just basically choke everything. But you seem to have like the opposite response, where you go over fancy.
Yeah. 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 I think that, yeah, everybody's gonna react differently. What I feel is that, like, I like the saying where, like, fatigue makes a coward of us all. And when we think about how fatigue affects you, it's going to affect everybody differently. But to me, it kind of diminishes you back to like your natural tendencies of a poker player. And for me, I'm scorchy. Like that's just me. When I first started playing, I wanted to make the guy look stupid. I wanted to find every single bluff and just redline people as hard as I could. Like that was like my initial tendency. So I think that that is kind of what it led me to early on when I started playing bigger. It's like I felt less than when I first started to play at 10K or something. Like I felt like these guys are better than me in a way. And so the way that I was, um, you know, immaturely showing that is, well, I'm going to take every computer bluff and just, you know, just show down that like one thing I had to do is that I was finding that, okay, I'm trying to prove to these guys how much I've studied or how good I am theoretically at this game. And so I'm taking all these bluffs. And so what I had to do was, I remember, this is probably 2021 or 2022. I said to myself, when I'm trying to tweak my frequencies, I said, if I feel like my hand should bluff every time, I need to do it 20% of the time. And that's how I'm going to try to control my frequency, because I'm having this like like this emotional thing happen where I really want to do this. And so I have to rein that in some way, right? And part of that's mindset, but part of that's also like trying to give yourself some guardrails to play well.
Yeah, I like that. Like, people use RNGs for various reasons, but the one you explained I can associate with the most is like basically a bias check, right? Like, oh, I probably want to do this, but to keep my bias in check, I'll sort of RNG this 50-50 instead of just doing it 100% of the time. Whereas like in like theory world, RNGing is important because, the solver knows the other guy, which doesn't really apply in practice, but to kind of keep yourself in check and override your bias, I think it's very useful.
Yeah. Yeah. And also for me, like just understanding like what kind of emotional state I'm in that moment. Like, do I think that my hand should call this river truly because he'll be over bluffing? Or do I even have 5% in me that's like, I want to be sick. Like, I want to make this sick play, the sick hero call, or whatever it might be. Like, do I have any emotion pushing my bias in this very moment such that I need to kind of like try to push against that in some way?
You would rather bust by making that low frequency play, and then at least you can say, "Wow, it was a cool bluff," then you would just check and showdown basically.
Yeah, the younger version of me definitely would. Like those are definitely mistakes that I had to kind of try to grow out of once I kind of started maturing and gaining that experience that kind of helps you with all those kind of issues.
You mentioned that your first Triton table was full of like 8 of the best no limit hold'em players in the last 10 years. What was the scorchy bust out hand?
I didn't have a scorchy one in that one. Luckily, I think like my first 5 streamed FTs, I scorched it off in some fashion. That on that one, I was really just focused on playing well, but I made some technical errors in that FT. but once again, it's like an experience thing. The Triton payout structure is much different than what I'm used to in America. I'm used to flatter payout structures, and I think that I didn't realize how top heavy it was four-handed. So I remember I just remember having a spot that I got shoved down blind versus blind, and I really want to make the right decision, and I 5-time bank for like probably an 11 big blind shove or 12 big blind shove, and I made the wrong decision. And so that one hurt me, but it was more from a technical standpoint. I think that by the time I was playing that FT, even though I was new to the Tritons, I felt like I had a lot of live experience, and I did feel like kind of not quite ready for the Tritons, you know what I mean? But much more confident in my game to not scorch it off.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with the MTT player and also in my limited MTT experience. I remember once I made like a day 3 or day 4, and I'm not used to, like, I'm a cash game player. I play short sessions focused on A game. But these MTT,
Sure.
especially day 4, it's just battle of the C games basically, right? Who manages to make okay decisions under huge fatigue, because I slept like shit for 2-3 days in a row, and at some point, it catches on to me. I remember I missed that the blinds went up, throw in the wrong chip, all that stuff, and I was pretty tilted. So how do you calibrate or do you recalibrate your game based on fatigue? So for example, let's say you have a very marginal open, would you let it go because you're just not in the right, you don't have the right energy to make that a plus if you play something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that I think about it more in my preparation than anything else. Like after I went on that kind of first stint where I went to my first Triton, went to some EPT, started playing some higher stakes, I really realized that playing well fatigued is so important. And so I really started to implement that in my training. Like I've been a big believer the last couple of years of anytime I'm very tired or play a live session and I'm done, I don't have anything the next day, I will go and study until 3 in the morning or something. Like I'll go play the trainer for 2 hours when I'm feeling my most tired. And I'm, um, my girlfriend is very, very wonderful and supportive, but there's been plenty of times where I'm like, I'll be in bed in 20 minutes. And then I get into the zone and I'm just like there for 4 hours. So I think that's been more impactful for me in my preparation. So that I can just always try to focus on playing my A game when other people are fatigued. I don't really have the thought in game of like, I'm going to pass on this open because I feel fatigued.
Is this like you're gathering information when playing the trainer in your C game about your C game so you can improve it? Or are you literally trying to improve, like just get reps in so that your C game becomes better?
Yeah, the second one. I think that, well, I mean, I guess it started with number one. Like it started with trying to understand what my C game was, but I really believed that I had a bad C game for a long time. And I look at some friends like Brock Wilson, David Peters, a lot of these guys, like I would take their C game over mine. Like they don't punt, they play pretty well. Like if they're not overly focused, their baseline strategy is still pretty good. I'm a little more sporadic. I've always really liked my A game, and I felt like when I'm fully focused, I can perform at a really high level. And so I really have had to work hard to kind of drive up that C game to like just make sure that when I'm fatigued, I'm still focused on the right things. I'm still focused on trying to make the best decision I possibly can in that moment. And if I don't, move on exceptionally quick. Because I think the fatigue obviously like leaks into emotions in that way too. Where like when you lose a big pot in a super high stakes tournament, like it's not the easiest to just like put that right behind. And that's a fatigue thing. And so like if I can just like really grind harder my reps when I'm fatigued, when that happens, I just feel more prepared kind of in that moment where I need to like get over it quickly and hop right back into it.
Obviously, I think we now all understand the benefits of being in war mode. After a couple weeks of war mode, at some point you also have to tune out, I would assume, right? To, like I said, it obviously takes a lot of energy, builds a lot of fatigue. What comes after war mode? Do you go like full recovery, don't touch anything?
Yeah, it's a good question, and another one that I got wrong for a long time. Like I used to just go 100 to 0, and that was really, really bad for me. I did what I thought I was supposed to do on rest days. I slept in, I laid in bed too long, I ordered some brunch, I watched some Netflix, like, and I just felt awful. Like it really made me feel just so bad. And so now I have like pretty structured cool downs after these periods where even if I'm doing things that I enjoy, I just structure it. I have to have some sort of structure so that my brain doesn't like just dump all these kind of emotions and all this energy out. So I'll typically just like be like, okay, I'm gonna sleep until 11, and then I'll schedule, a walk, and I'll go like on a nice walk through Red Rock in Vegas or something like that, with my girlfriend or with a friend. From 2 to 4, I'll watch a stream, like super laid back, like just taking like brief notes, and then I'll go get a haircut, a massage, and have dinner with other friends. Like just structuring it in a way that I know what I'm doing. I'm doing like recuperative things for myself, and I'm still being productive for 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. I think that having some productivity through that cool down is really important to me. And it really keeps me kind of like understanding why I'm doing this, like not just like dumping this emotion out and like being a lazy guy that's ordering just a bunch of food at home and resting. Meanwhile, I have way less energy after 2 days of that than if I structured a bit better.
Yeah, it seems like you became more deliberate, right? Whereas in the past, like, well, I guess I do nothing, and then just chilling, Netflix, ordering food. Yeah, I can see how that would make you a bit lazy. It's like the same with like if you
Yeah,
look in sports, it's not like the day after a match they don't do anything. That they do active recovery. It's like, hey,
exactly.
active
Yep,
recovery, not just doing nothing, right? Adam sounds
absolutely.
like a pretty GTO cooldown routine to me. I saw walks in nature. I know you're a big fan. I saw a massage, haircut. Hey man, haircut. I always approve a good haircut. Uh, any improvements that
Yeah,
you would
you've
like to suggest to it?
No, I think it's a good thing to create structure to your off days. I think it's something that poker players struggle with. They have a full-on grind day, and then on the off day, they're like, "Should I study? What do I do?" And a lot of players get lost. They almost end up at their computer, just kind of drifting along or watching Netflix. So yeah, I think it's a really good idea to think about what you'd like to do in those days that one regenerates you, creates some sort of recovery, but also that you kind of enjoy. It's like I think sometimes poker players don't like recovery days. It's like, oh, an off day just feels like a waste of a day, but it doesn't have to be a waste of a day. It can be actually a fun day where you feel good. And as Justin was saying there, like that structure is really important because look how structured your grinding is. Then you remove all that structure and just have a free roll day. It sounds great, but very quickly it unravels. Behaviors come out that you don't normally do, eating junk food or doing things that don't really help you. So yeah, I really think it's a good idea to, for yourself, create your own recovery day. What you would do to enjoy, generally socializing, time outdoors, exercise will be great things to do. But yeah, just create some structure. I think is a good idea for most people. And when you're talking about war mode, you mentioned something called the killer instinct. And I'm curious to dive into this a little bit deeper. Is the killer instinct something you feel like you've developed throughout your career? And how much is that killer instinct needed to play at the highest level?
Yeah, great question. Um, I always grew up playing a lot of sports and being very competitive, and I think that I'm sure that like it was somewhat developed over from a very young age in terms of I loved being a gamer. Like I loved winning in games and competing at a high level. And I think that poker, it's I don't want to say that like we're lying to players, but I think that there's this little like pressure that you feel as a player where you're like detached from the results. Don't focus on variance. Don't like it's kind of like just removing our emotions away. And for me, it made me lethargic and just like happy to be there and not my best self or not my best version of myself as a player. And so I think that to me that killer instinct or like killer mode or whatever is just like it's just effort. It's effort and focus. It's trying really hard at the table. Like I'm dedicating my life to be the best tournament player I can be. Why in the world would I go sit down in a high stakes tournament and like not try my hardest? You know what I mean? But like I feel like there's been this pressure to kind of like detach from results and like if you're trying hard, it's not that cool or whatever. Like I said, I don't want to play these like high stakes, fun cash games and be enjoyable. Like I'm trying my best to be the best player I can possibly be, and I don't care about that. You know what I mean? Like the money and all that stuff doesn't do anything. So like I want to lean into those emotions and try to have that focus me at a higher level than not caring. You know?
Yeah, I love this. How do you lean into that in the right way? All right, because as you mentioned, like a lot of advice is to not care about results, to kind of detach yourself. But if you look at like sports, you look at elite performers, they care a lot. They put their heart and soul into stuff, and they want to perform well, and they want to win. That's the main thing, they want to win. But at the same time, if you take that too far and you put too much pressure on results, we also know that can cause a lot of pressure, a lot of internal emotions that are maybe negative to performance. So how do you kind of get that sweet spot where you care enough, you put everything into it, but the emotional state doesn't get too intense around the outcome itself?
Yeah. Another great question. I'm working through this for sure because I think that I studied CFR models so much that everything I do in life is like a CFR. It's like, I care too little. Okay, jab, jab, jab. Like, I care too much. All right, try to optimize. I care too little again, but less. And it's like so back and forth iterating, trying to find the right answer to your question. And I think that I'm not there yet. It's tough, right? Because when you put so much into it and you care so much, and then you have bad results, it does hurt, right? It does cause you so much pain. And I think that right now, the way I feel is that I just want my care to be pushing into my process. It's like, when I lose, okay, can I go back through that and be happy and proud of my process, right? Did I do everything that I could to focus on what I could control to give myself the best chance to do very well? And then when you lose, it's like, okay, I can still be happy with my process. I brought my best game. I tried my hardest. Okay, now what's my process? Well, I go through all my hands. I review. I cool down. I prep. I go into the next one more prepared and a better player than I was the day before, the week before, whatever it was. And I think that if I can focus more on winning the day and winning those small battles of processes, it detaches it from winning in the game, in the poker game. All that stuff kind of follows. So I'm trying to build the wins and losses into like, did I win the day? Was I better than my competition today? And maybe today was a cool down day. Maybe today was whatever. But I'm in a constant state of competition against these fairy competitors, right? I'm like, oh, how much is Chidwick studying today? Okay, I'm going to study more. Like, how do I bridge that gap? Like that was a big thing when I first came into the high stakes. Like, I looked at Darren Elias or Chidwick or some of these guys, and I'm like, okay, well, they have way more experience than me. They understand the game better than me. They have more money and connections than me. Like where's my edge? And I'm like, okay, well, I can work harder today, right? I can like just improve a little bit more than them today. And then I can do the same tomorrow. And if I just win every single day, at some point I catch these guys, right? I don't know when it's going to be. But I think that if I can really lean into my like wins and losses into that process, that's when I feel like the losses don't feel bad, right? The losses are controllables then, right? And so that I think is what I'm trying to get to in my process. I'm not quite optimized in that place yet, but that's kind of how I feel currently.
Yeah, I think that framing is really powerful because, as you mentioned there, we're trying to create some sort of attachment to doing well, to performing well, but we don't want to get too attached to the outcome itself that it creates a negative thing. But at the same time, we want to be able to show up in the best way and really care about how we perform. So I really like linking it to winning the day because it's a very practical step you can take. It's something it's an internal battle. Someone can't go, hey, you won your day. You've got to internally win your day. And then every single day becomes something that you can win. And when you fail a day or a day doesn't go to plan, next day, go again. Can I win the day? And even the day gets brought down to moments. Can I win this hour? Can I win this next 10 minutes? And I think if we live our lives in that kind of very short-term presence of like trying to be the best in that moment, the long term almost always takes care of itself. As long as the direction's set, as long as you're learning, you're improving. Yes, it might take longer than other people to get to the goals, but if you can just keep winning your personal days in the way that's right for you and you're learning the process, I think it's a really practical way to like link the concepts together, what we talked about in terms of trying to perform at your best without too much pressure building over the long term.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned your sports background. I know you played semi-professional soccer and you also studied engineering. I want to dive into both of those experiences separately. So as a soccer player, I think you were a goalkeeper. How did that shape your poker career? What were some things you learned through sport?
Yeah, I mean, like winning the day, I would say is a big thing. That was a big thing in college that our coach kind of pushed forth. It was like, you only play on Friday and Sunday. It's not that many matches throughout a college soccer season in America. And so like, it was all about just winning the day every single day. And it's not just about being a soccer player, right? You had to be a student athlete and just try to like, okay, we're going to go harder than our competitors in the morning in the gym. And then we're going to like do a better job in school throughout the day. And then at training at 3 p.m., we go harder than our opponent. Like, so it's just like, I think that winning the day was very important. Another thing that I think the sports was important for, especially as a goalkeeper, is like just dealing with the pressure, dealing with the spotlight a little bit, handling wins and losses and handling embarrassing moments. And I mean, my 21st birthday, I made a big mistake in a match. We were winning 2-0 against a rival to win the league. And I gave up 2 goals for it to go into overtime last 5 minutes. We lose 3-2 in overtime. And that was like a very, very painful moment, and you learn about yourself in those moments and how you respond, how you kind of grow and whatnot. And I really think that a lot of that stuff, like, I take with me in poker today.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can imagine the pressure of a goalkeeper in England when a goalkeeper makes a mistake. They might make 3 or 4 mistakes in a whole year. their front page of the news, get this guy out, he's no good, he's unreliable. So I can
Yeah.
imagine from one, the personal perspective, feeling disappointed in yourself, then your teammates, feeling like you've let those down, then also losing the match and that competitive drive. So yeah, there must be a lot to go into that. So with that, like, how did you process that? Because I can imagine that must have been a very low point in your own kind of sporting background, but also in your own kind of personal development. You probably learned some things in that moment. Anything that come to mind?
I just think like belief is so important. Like belief and self-confidence and these things that you can achieve whatever it is. And I think that I've always really pushed hard in that kind of way, that when I'm in a low moment, it's like, okay, well, like, what can I do right now? Like, I'm not a person to dwell on it. I don't think. I think that I really do focus on pushing hard and like pushing through those kind of moments with effort and grit, right? Like just taking it on the chin and being like, okay, well, like, I fucked up. All right, what can I do today? You know what I mean? Well, I can train harder, right? I can get better sleep. I can like focus more. I can talk to my defenders and see like, okay, what did they see? What went wrong? What can we do for the next match? And just like try to be like really growth oriented and solution oriented.
Yeah, I love that. And I think sport teaches us this so well because I did middle-distance running growing up, so I can relate to a lot of the things from my own narrative. And every time you don't perform as you want, rather than that being like a thing that really matters, it's always like, okay, what can I learn from this? Back to training, train tomorrow morning, let's go. I'm going to push harder. And you end up building a skill set of every time things get tough, you lean into training, you lean into practice, you lean into getting better. It's interesting when people don't come from a sports background, they often struggle with this. You mentioned you don't dwell. People who like don't come from some sort of competitive background often do dwell. They often go, oh, I messed this up, and they get caught in that negative energy. So for you, obviously the sport background helped with that. But in practical terms, like when you feel that negative energy, how do you make sure you do channel it somewhere positive? I know like for myself, I naturally gravitate towards more healthy behaviors with that kind of fuel of disappointment, self-doubt, frustration, where other people might go in a different direction. For you, how do you kind of make sure that that energy gets used for progress?
Yeah. I think the thing that came to mind when you said that is like support. You know, like even in soccer in that moment, I distinctly remember like my teammates in that moment and like how supportive they were and how much that helped me. You know, they're not like, screw you, you suck. You're like, it's all right, man. It's all right. Like, cause they see the effort you're putting in. Like they see all that path that you're on, that when those moments come, they know that you tried, right? Like that you worked hard. And so I kind of feel that way in poker a little bit, where like when the negativity comes up, like I do lean on the people around me. You know what I mean? And the support system, because like that helps push me in the right direction. If it was just me, if I really was doing this for like my own ego and personal benefits and all that stuff, I think I would flounder. I don't think it does. It's not enough of a motivation for me, where when I'm feeling low, it's like, whatever. Let me just like order some shitty food and like go to the strip club with my friends and just like let it out, whatever. Like that's not the way person I want to be, right? And that's, I think, because I have the support system in place, that like I kind of want to like honor and give back to all these people that have done so much for me and help push me in the right direction. And so in those losses, it really does, like I lean into that and I'm like, okay, like I have to do this. You know what I mean? I have to go and do things the right way. That's kind of what came to mind.
How do you learn to trust yourself when you're in high pressure scenarios? For me, like growing up as a runner, my dad was my coach and I felt so much pressure to perform every race day. And
Yeah.
from the age of like 13 to 15, I'd train amazing. I'd be really talented runners and then I'd run awful on the weekends. And I felt like so disappointed in myself. And then looking back, I just had so much adrenaline, so much cortisol, so much, I want to do well, I want to do well. And I couldn't channel that. And as I've learned more about myself and more about kind of the stress response, your ability to handle those heightened feelings in the body and keep the mind calm and channel them into performance is such a superpower. You know, I'm using this as an example because you mentioned playing those kind of high rollers in the Triton. It feels different. Something just feels different when you're at Ivy across from you. But I can imagine you've learned a lot of skill sets through your sports background where it feels different, but it's like you're used to this heightened feeling and performing. So for you, what have been some of the keys to being able to perform under pressure, both as an athlete and as a poker player?
I would say that it might be a little bit of a funny answer, but like faking it a lot and lying to myself and training good habits. Because like one thing I noticed early on at Triton is that a lot of the guys did not like being on stream. The pressure was higher. Your decisions were heightened. everything about it is harder, right? You're on day 8, you just lost $500,000, and now you have a tough river decision on stream in front of thousands of people that people are going to be analyzing, right? That isn't the easiest thing. And I was noticing these guys that would vocalize it and say, oh, I don't like playing on stream. Like, I can't believe I'm on stream again, level 2, whatever. So I just lied to myself. I was like, okay, perfect. I love playing on streams. I didn't love playing on streams. It didn't, but I just told myself that over and over and over. And now I enjoy it. You know what I mean? So I just faked it for as long as I could. And I told myself, perfect. They don't like streams. I love streams. Put me on the stream as much as you want. Put me in the biggest spot in the world every single time. Let me make mistakes. Let me make good decisions. It doesn't make a difference. And so I think that like faking it till you make it kind of, and just like realizing what you're after and pushing your mind into that belief and into areas that like you can get to, because like you can achieve and you can do so much in whatever it is, but you have to believe that you can do it or else you're in big trouble.
Yeah, and I think with that, it's almost like leaning in to what's difficult. I think often like when things get hard, we want to avoid stuff, we want to move away. And if we can find a way to go, right, this is a challenge, but I know if I can show up in this moment, if I lean into this. So something's painful and you go, oh, I want the pain to stop. It feels real bad. You're like, please stop. As soon as you go, right, give me more pain. Bring it on. I can handle this. I can handle 10x this. The pain doesn't go away, but all of a sudden you feel like you can handle it. And I feel like that's what you're doing, rather than like you're obviously faking it's one term, but I feel like leaning into hard things where other guys are like trying to avoid those kind of short tables. So yeah, it feels like a real big strength.
Yeah, I love that. I think that I'm not sure how familiar you are with David Goggins, but he wrote a great book called Can't Hurt Me. And this book was super helpful in kind of what you're saying. And one of the sections is on the cookie jar. And he's like, you do so many hard things and you fill a freaking cookie jar with all this hard stuff you've done, so that when you have something else, you're like, well, I just did all of that. What is this? You know, and that I've had to do that a few times where like, okay, I went on a streak where I didn't FT for a while. And I'm just looking back like, dude, I played so good at that FT with a bunch of just like sickos. And then the next FT, I also played great then. What am I worried about? This FT on paper is so much softer than all these other things I've done. Like what am I worried about? You know, and it kind of pushes you into that. So I like the leaning in idea. I think that's definitely a beneficial mindset.
Yeah, I think with the kind of belief you mentioned, having a strong belief you can get there, at some point belief needs backed up with evidence. So if we can stack evidence day by day over time, then when we get to those tough moments, it's like, what's my evidence bank that shows me I can actually show up in this moment? Some people can override the evidence bank with just strong belief. I love those people. Those are the kind of anomalies. But most of us, we need that cookie jar full of, I did this, and we almost like incrementally improve it. Did something slightly harder, did a 10K, then a half marathon, then a marathon. I think it's really good with yourself to go, where am I at currently? What have I currently proved to myself I can do? And how can I win some days and add to that cookie jar and do some hard stuff? And yeah, I've got a kind of big belief of doing like kind of daily challenges, something out of your comfort zone every single day. Something you don't want to do, whether it's a cold shower, whether it's going on a run, whether it's meditation, something like, I just don't want to do that today. Every single day, do one of those, because that's that kind of building of that muscle, because we need that muscle, that kind of resilience in the tough moments. And once the tough moment arrives, it's too late. It's like, did you do the work? Did you build up that cookie jar full of examples or not? So yeah, really love that. There's so many angles we could cover in that one. But I want to segue quickly into you studying engineering, because I know that was also a big part of your background. How did that shape your approach to poker overall, both from playing and studying?
Yeah, I think it was a belief thing as well, right? Like in college, I played soccer, and I thought for a little bit there that I was going to try to play soccer for forever. And so school for me was a little bit secondary through some of those years. And I still got through a very difficult major that was quite competitive as well. And so I think that like from a belief standpoint, it showed that like I felt like I could do anything. I can learn anything. Like if I had a big test on organic chemistry, like whatever, we just won some big match and went out the night after, like I can cram it in a day and I can learn it and do fine. I can get by. And so I think that like the belief was important. And I think the structure was super important. I have a lot of great friends, and there's no right way, right? But I have a lot of great friends that didn't go to college, and that comes with other benefits and other deficiencies. But one thing that I'm very grateful for with the engineering school is that I had to learn to structure my time. I had to learn to set up my things in a way that I can go study very hard for 4 hours and learn the subject. I'm not going to waste time on my phone. I'm not going to like have a YouTube video on and watch a Mechanics of Poker podcast while I'm having intense study, right? That's not the right way to like learn. I want to watch the podcast and get as much as I can out of that, and then I want to go have this. And so I think that like the process of learning and studying, I felt like I had an edge on when I kind of pushed into the poker space.
Yeah, and how does that apply to your studying now? Do you feel like you're someone who could do these kind of longer, deep studies that you feel like maybe other players struggle with? And how do you apply that kind of engineering structure to your learning poker?
Yeah, I think that the nice thing for me is that I love studying, but like I love the game, playing it. But really like a big issue that I had early on is that I wanted to study. I didn't really want to go grind. I just wanted to study more, and so I really enjoyed that part of the game. It never felt hard. It never felt like I was having to work hard. You know what I mean? And I just enjoyed it. So I think that um, the structure and things like adding intensity into study, it helps. But overall, I just enjoy learning about the game and learning about all the nuances, mechanics, and how sensitive things are and how things can change if it's this player versus this player. And yeah, I love that stuff. So I think that I think it helped me with engineering. But I think if you don't really enjoy what you're learning, it's gonna feel more grindy, right? Like no matter what the subject is, like engineering definitely felt way more grindy than studying poker for 40 hours or whatever.
Yeah, I can imagine coming from your engineering background, then you get into poker, you're like, oh my God, this is like so easy to study because it's so much more fun. But you've already shown you can do the hard stuff. You can do the study when you don't necessarily want to. And then, yeah, once poker comes around, it's more, I'm guessing, more enjoyable for 99% of people, probably in that engineering.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably felt like a natural motivation boost to do that. For you, when did you transition to poker? What sort of age group, age were you, and how did that correlate with your studying?
Yeah, so I think that I played a lot when I was young, and then I went on and went to college and kind of lived normal life, and poker kind of went. It was just like a fun little hobby. But in 2017, I tore my AC joint in my shoulder, and I stopped traveling with the team for like a 4 month period. And when they were kind of on the road playing and things, I was just like getting back into poker. So this was like by 2016, 2017, I was just playing for fun. And then I graduated in end of 2017. I tried to kind of go pro, had a couple trials and things like that, but I didn't end up getting drafted into MLS. And so that was kind of like it for me with soccer. And then that was when I really dove in. It was kind of like early 2018. I'd read some poker books and I'd studied a little bit, but really 2018 was I met some really good mentors and started to like study the game at a much higher level.
What attracted you to the game at that age, and how did you think you were going to be able to make it work?
Yeah, I love strategy games. I love playing games. I love competition. I think that because I played it at a young age, and then that kind of led me into chess, and I love playing chess. I still play every once in a while, more often than I probably should online. And so I just think that like everything about the game was just beautiful to me from an early age. Like the strategy of it, the ability to like be creative and be logical and use math, science, art, psychology, like all of it together was just always like this beautiful game, like such a beautiful game to me. And so I think I was just like drawn to it from a very early age.
What were some of the initial challenges you ran into when you went professional?
Um, Being a young dumb kid, like I think that I would say when I was like building up a bankroll early on into 2017, sorry, 2018, um, I I just like thought I was so good. I was the best player that I knew, so I must be one of the best in the world. And I kind of started to climb the stakes in online cash, and I played probably 500,000 hands at that point and had clear win rate and good data and notebooks filled and poker books everywhere. Like I just loved it, and I had too big of an ego. And I was on the couch sitting hanging out with my dad, and I loaded up a couple tables of 10, 20 online, and I scorched off my entire bankroll in a matter of 4 or 5 days, and you just feel like what just happened. Like none of it felt real. It never felt like real money to me. Even today, none of it really feels like dollars. But in that moment, that was a pretty low moment that you kind of have to make those mistakes again, but they're really painful ones. And I think that like losing that last 4K in 1020 online and like closing my computer and having zero in my account, I still think there's like no swing I can ever experience that'll feel worse than that, you know? and that's a pretty like cool thing to have that I think a lot of people have had. That when you do that, it shows it's not about money. It's not about the dollar value. It's just about like the discipline and the self mastery and all those other things that you feel like you failed in that area.
How did you rebuild yourself from that rock bottom moment? It feels like that could have been the end of the story. That was it. I give it a
Yeah,
try, did my best. How
yeah.
come it wasn't?
I thought it would be honestly, and I got really lucky that one of my mentors, I reached out to Jonathon Little very early. I read a couple of his books. I reached out to him and I said like, "Hey, I'm looking for coaching. I'm playing 25 an L, 50 an L. Like, could I get some coaching?" And he told me his rates, and I could not afford it. Right, like he's playing 25 an L. You can't afford coaching from a top poker coach, and so we ended up trading work essentially, where I would work for his company for 10 hours, going through content, sending him like outlines and notes and things like that. And then he would coach me 1 hour for every 10 hours I worked. And I got so lucky that he did that, so that when I hit rock bottom, I sent him a message and I said, "Hey, poker's not for me. I'm gonna go get a job in engineering. I'm done with this." And he was like, "Give me a call." And we got on the phone and he was like, "What's going on? Like talk to me." And he really walked me off the ledge kind of, I would say, and was like, "Look, like your graph is straight up. Like you are working so hard at this. It would be such a shame to kind of like throw it away." And um and so what he did is he was like, "Look, like what if I just start paying you to help me with the company more?" And so that was really when I essentially took a job with Jonathon Little to help him at poker coaching. And then that gave me a little bit of income to rebuild and then try poker again. And he's like, "You have to learn from this. You have to improve, etc." And without that, I would have just gotten a job in engineering and definitely just played poker for fun, you know?
What a great story. And I think it's a really good lesson to anyone listening who maybe is struggling themselves. Because that idea to one approach him for coaching, to decide to do 10 hours for 1 hour of coaching, that's like a very out there thing to do. Like most people wouldn't have took that approach. They would have said, "I can't afford it." And that was that. So yeah, for you to go the extra mile, why do you feel like you were willing to do that? Because I think a lot of people would be like, "What do I gain from this? I get 1 hour coaching, I'm doing 10 hours of helping them. Is this going to help me in the long term?" What made you think that you wanted to go down that route? Because I'm sure at this point you're thinking, "Okay, my friends are getting career jobs, life's loads of different options, and you're still not giving up, even though life's telling you to reassess what you should be doing."
Yeah, I just think that I'm not sure. I think there was just the passion for playing, the love of poker. And I never had an ego about it. I don't care about my hourly or somebody else's hourly. I've never cared about like thin EV things. And that's definitely like comes with its shortcomings. But for me, I've always just wanted to like surround myself with people that are better than me, learn everything I can, try to provide value for the people around me, and just like be a sponge in any kind of setting. Like I really do just love the, um, like podcasts or things like that where you get to hear elite people. Kobe Bryant. I love listening to Kobe Bryant interviews and podcasts. You just get to have Kobe Bryant as your mentor. He's just over here like just divulging all this info about how he became great, and that is just like so interesting to me. So I think that I've always just loved that kind of stuff and never had an ego with it. So to me, it was still I was still getting a good deal. I'm always an optimistic guy, and like to me, I was like perfect. I only have to work 10 hours, and I get to get coaching in poker. I didn't even realize this could be a job a year ago. You know what I mean? And now like I'm all I have to do is work 10 hours to get like professional coaching. That's amazing to me.
I love that. Love that optimistic, glasses half full, but also like just wanted to learn, just wanted to absorb. As you mentioned, like for you, you could see so much value in learning from a high stakes coach that you were willing to do almost anything for that. So during this patch, like what were some of the lessons you learned? Because obviously there's the rock bottom moment. Generally, that happens when your processes aren't correct. You need to learn some things about yourself. You need to level up your kind of character to keep going on. So for you, during this next phase, what were some of the lessons you need to learn to get to that next stage?
Yeah, I think that there's so many things. It's hard to put it in. It's hard to find the right words to answer. I think that the ego is such a big thing with it. Like I had to realize that okay, for whatever reason, I'm lying to myself. Right, beating 200 and out online is great, but like I'm not the best. I have so much further to go. I had to really think about why. Why was I doing this? Like, why did I want to win? Because if it was just about making a bunch of money, this is what my life looks like. It looks like me trying to get pretty good, me taking big shots, every once in a while spiking and crushing 2K and L for a week for 80K, and then swinging back down. And like I saw that was just that wasn't something I was actually interested in. I was naive to think that, I wanted to get rich quick. That's really what it is. I think that you learn that poker is not a get rich quick scheme. Nothing is a get rich quick scheme. And if there ever is, it's almost always an awful idea, right? Poker is an awesome way to get really rich slowly, like very slowly. Find a 5% edge and grind it, right? Like investing, same kind of thing. And I think that learning that was definitely a big thing for me. And I was able to also with income I was getting now, because you can't do that when you're relying on poker income to build your bankroll and live your life. But now that I'm getting some poker coaching income by helping, the company and working for them, all of a sudden poker could be this like really just like, okay, zoom out, long-term view. Nothing is short-term mindset anymore. I'm paying the bills. I can move to Vegas. I can do these things and have my life be sorted at a baseline level. And then I can focus on this long-term goal that I have, which isn't money related.
It's very interesting because I think a lot of people can relate to getting into poker for short-term motives, whether it's to make money quickly, whether it's to get high stakes quickly. And at some point that dream gets shattered. The illusion of speed, quickness, being rich overnight kind of evaporates, or unless you get some sort of lucky bink. But even then, you generally realize that it doesn't come quickly for long. So for you, like, how did you recalibrate to the long-term vision? And what was the long-term vision? You mentioned it wasn't money. You mentioned you enjoyed learning. How did you start to, one, strip the ego of that wanting that short-term win, short-term get rich quick? And how did you start to align your daily behaviors, but also your goals with a more longer-term vision?
Yeah, I think it really was like the things I was learning from others about what it takes to become very great at something. And everybody, no matter what industry you were kind of looking at, it was all about getting 1% better every single day. Like just finding tiny improvements to move and having that graph, like 1% every day over 10 years is just so big. And I think that I really got addicted to that process. And I got obsessed with improving and trying to improve as quickly as I could. I think that one like very beneficial thing was that probably 6 months later, Jonathon kind of was like, hey, I think that there's like been diminishing returns in the coaching. He feels like he gave me a lot of stuff to take me from 25 to 200, but now he wants to help me kind of get other coaching. And I thought that was a really crazy move. Like you don't see that often from poker coaches, but he essentially split the cost of getting 8 hours with a guy named Michael Acevedo. And this was probably 2018. And he's like, you need to dive into the solvers more if you want like to become as good as you can possibly be. And so we chopped the coaching cost from Michael Acevedo, who was like a GTO expert. And he essentially gave me 4 hours on Munker Solver, 4 hours on Pio Solver, and now like unlocked new doors for me essentially. And so I think that it was just really about that process of just trying to improve. And as you're improving, finding new things that are able to kind of allow you to continue leveling up over and over and over.
When did you start to get that initial success enough where you start to realize, wait a second, not only am I learning and enjoying this, but I'm also getting the results and I can make this work? Was there a point where you had some results behind you where you started to think this could be a real career path?
Yeah, I think that COVID probably. So I moved to Vegas in the start of 2019. I played like the Vegas 6 max cash. And I did quite well, but it was just an hourly. It was like, okay, I'm making $60 an hour. And that, I knew that was never really my like end goal. And I actually had met a buddy named Aram Zobian, who's a successful tournament player. And it was like, maybe June or July, I guess it was whenever the main event is. So early July. And he's like, what day are you playing the main? And we like had played basketball together and hung out off the table. And he knew I was just playing cash games and he was playing tournaments. And I was like, oh, I'm not playing the main. Like I don't play any tournaments. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, and so he pretty much took half my action. And he's like, you have to go play the main. it's just like an amazing tournament, and it's fun and all this stuff. And so I went and played the main for the first time in 2019, and that kind of started my tournament push, I would say. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is fun. Like I'm looking at the game differently. Online cash, I was extremely mechanical in the way that I was building my strategies and playing. I was never like the biggest winner in the pool because I just like, I didn't care enough to like focus on deviations and all these things. I just kind of had my framework in a way that I like to play different boards and different spots. And it was enough to print a good edge, but not an amazing one. But then tournaments came and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to this. Like there's so much more to learn. There's all these new concepts and things I'd never really thought of before. And so I think that was, middle of 2019, I started to play some online tournaments, and I won a 109 early in 2020 as COVID was starting for like 60K. And I was like, oh my God, like winning $100 tournament for 60K was like just so insane, And I think that at that point I was like, okay, like I'm going to go after this tournament thing. And so all of COVID, I just like switched over to tournaments and started playing. Like I started with like an online $100 ABI, $120 ABI. And then by the end of 2020, I was playing probably like a 350, 400 online ABI. I went to Mexico for the GG series and had some results there. Ended up losing overall, but I was like getting my taste of starting to move up stakes. And I think that it was kind of like in that COVID era that I got the confidence and the belief that like, okay, I know what I want now. Like I didn't really know what I wanted beforehand, but now that like lockdown happens, everybody comes home, I realize, okay, like I want to get it done in like live tournaments. Like that is where I love everything about this. The competition, the travel, the lifestyle, all this stuff. Like that's where I want to do. And so that's kind of when I set out to go after being the best tournament player that I can possibly be.
Yeah, so with this, you mentioned kind of that initial success and maybe your eyes opening to MTTs being a more fun format, fits naturally with your way of learning, your kind of creative, curious minds. With this, like, what were some of the goals maybe you set for yourself? You said being the best kind of tournament player you could be. Did you have dreams of playing the Tritons? Or maybe Tritons weren't even that popular then, but did you have dreams of going to the highest stakes? Because I can imagine you mentioned kind of from the cash game background, grinding out a win rate, grinding out that smaller edge. And I think with tournaments, there's a lot more hedging risk and like deciding how far you want to go, deciding how big you want to play. And it seems like for you, it was just like higher, higher, higher. So what kind of sparked that, and what was the kind of motive behind wanting to play the biggest games?
I think it was just the competition. I watched. I started watching some tournaments, and I watched Ali win the 2018 Poker Masters, and that was just like, oh my God! Like, there's a lot more to this than what I think. Like I'm just playing these online cash games and I watch this like new young kid come and just like shred these guys. And I hadn't seen that before. And I'm watching and I'm like, oh my God, like I want to do that. I want to like go and battle these guys. And like there's still this massive gap, especially in 2018, 2019, 2020, where like, I mean, even today, I still believe that like the best players in 5 years will be much better than today. And the best players today are much better than 7 years ago. And I think that like I was watching that as a third party, and it was really just like, okay, I know that I don't care about money because I just lost a bunch and that didn't make me feel anything. But like going after the short-term money wasn't really a thing that I was super interested in. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I love? And I love the challenge. I love the competition. I love the pressure. I need to get to the high stakes as fast as possible in battle and try my best and see if I can beat this.
Big shout out to our sponsors. First off, GTO Wizard. If you're looking to level up your game, let me tell you about GTO Wizard. It's got everything you need to improve, whether you're just starting out or already crushing it. You've got tools like the Hand History Analyzer, a GTO Trainer, and even custom drills to help you sharpen your skills and make smarter plays. It's what so many guests we have had on used to dominate cash games and tournaments. Get started now for free and get 10% off your first purchase using the link down below, gtowizard.com/mechanics. If you sign up, you also get access to the weekly coaching webinars where you can learn from me and other great coaches. So looking forward to educating you guys over there.
So earlier in the conversation, we talked about caring more and really putting your all into what you're doing. And you mentioned in the questionnaire that for a long time, you suppressed your emotions very heavily. So I'm curious to know like how that's showed up in your days, but also the negative impact of suppressing emotions. Because I'm sure a lot of players can relate to almost want to be more robotic, not knowing how to feel emotions, so they end up suppressing them. So for you, how did that show up?
Yeah, I think that I just got so addicted to like, so obsessed, whatever you want to say, with like just EV. You know, I was like, just make the highest EV play over and over and over. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. It's just like execute, make the best play. And then when you're multi-tabling online tables, like now I look back and I'm like, of course I'm playing my C game. I'm 12 tabling and like in like a mix of different stakes and games and whatever. Like you kind of train yourself just to be like, all right, just play, you the best you can, and totally detach your emotions from the session, And I think that maybe it is the best way to be at the start. And then once you realize that, like, okay, it's not that painful, dude, relax. Like, it's not that serious. You can make a mistake. You can do these things. Like, you're fine, And I think that until you kind of get to that point, then you're just going to be like a little, not trying quite hard enough, and that's definitely how it showed up, was that I think it was holding me back a little bit. Just kind of like lazily playing pretty well. Everybody said that I was playing really good and I was doing these things, and like, you kind of, maybe it was feeding in my ego too. Like people around me were like, oh my gosh, you're so well studied, you're so good, you're so this, you're that. It's like it kind of gets you in this mode of like going through the motions and just thinking you're great. When I was missing this, jump of really trying to execute at a high level. I think that was kind of a missing piece for me.
Yeah, and I think with that, when you do try that hard and you do come up short, it does hurt. The emotion generally is quite intense. And as you mentioned there, like not being scared of it, realizing it's not that big of a deal, I can experience this and I'll be okay. Because yeah, I think a lot of people go through life avoiding emotions, going half in, half out with a lot of stuff, because they don't want to feel that disappointment, that frustration, that real intensity from putting your all into something and coming up short. So for you, like when that does happen, let's say, I'm sure throughout your career, there's moments where you have tried your hardest and it's come up short. How do you manage to use that in a proactive way? We've already talked about this a little bit, but in terms of keeping confidence during periods when you're lowest, how do you regain that confidence?
I think that it's important to zoom out. I think that this is something I struggled with for a while. And that's like, it's still just about the long term. You would never look at a stock investment and be like, oh man, I'm buying it, whatever, every single month. And like, it's down these 2 months. It's like, well, I'm not buying it to be up in 2 months. You know what I mean? Like I'm buying it to be up in 20 years. I don't care. Right. And so like, I think that I always have to go back to that, because like, sure, I've had a bad 3 months, but like zoom out. I've had an amazing 6 years. So like, what am I talking about? But like, if you zoom out a graph, it smooths out everything. And like this dip that feels like it's such a crater, you zoom out and you're like, it's a little blip. Am I really being a baby over this like little tiny like blip in the graph? I would never care about it if it was a stock or a friend I was investing in or anything else that's logical. And so I think that like, yeah, the zoom out is kind of how I try to deal with those moments of loss.
Why do you think people struggle with that? Because I 100% agree. When we zoom out, we see a higher vantage point, have a better perspective, and most things don't feel extreme. But I feel like the default is the inverse. The default is to freak out to the short term. So for you personally, how have you been able to use that practical tool of zooming out in your life?
Yeah, I think that I go back to that CFR idea, where like I have this idea of like, okay, this river decision is so important that if I get it wrong, I die. And I pair that with like, dude, it's not that important. We're playing a card game on a rock in Korea. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? My life is good. My family, like, I have everything I need, right? And so I'm constantly like coming back and trying to find this balance, and it is difficult. It's hard to know exactly. I forget your initial question, actually. I just thought about that in my head, but what was your initial thought of that?
No, that's a better response than I anticipated, because that's
Okay.
so important. I feel like the ability to give your all to every moment as if it's the most important thing in the world, and then when it's finished, it'll be like, doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
the very like opposite ends of the spectrum. But if you merge them together, I think it's the ultimate framework. Because if you go too far one way and just care about the moment, you can get very attached to short-term outcomes. If you're too abstract and you're like, yeah, nothing really matters, you don't give enough to the moment often. So yeah, I think it's a really powerful framing to be able to give your all, and then once it's done, that was all I could do, and on to that next moment. So is this something you've had to work on? Have you felt like you've got better at letting things go? Because I feel like the challenge with that approach is when you do give your all to the moments, how do you just let it go and get to the next one and kind of just get on with stuff? So for you, how have you been able to balance that?
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm improving on even today. Like I think that I'll be better in 2 years than I am today at it. It's still challenging because when you give it your absolute all, it does feel more important than it actually is. Like in that moment, right? It makes you feel like, man, I just flew to Barcelona. I left my home. I left the people I care about. I spent 2 weeks. I lost a bunch of money. I hopped on a plane. I flew to Jeju. I spent 3 weeks in this place I hate. You know, I don't love being in, a tiny island Marriott mall with like, not the people I care about, like my friends, family, etc. And then you lose a bunch and you're like, oh my God, like what am I even doing? I can't believe I just spent 5 weeks of my life giving it my all and just getting crushed. And I came back with way less money than I had at the start. You know what I mean? And so like I think that there is this struggle that you just have to like then iterate back and be like, well, dude, it's not that important. Who cares what happens over 2 months? Like, I'm not doing this for what happens in 2 months. And every time I'm like running bad or whatever, I always try to put in my head that like this is part of the competition. Everybody's going to run bad in these moments. And so if I can be the person that runs bad and still works hard, still brings my A game, still believes I'm gonna win, still does all these good things. Like when my opponent runs bad, he's moaning about it for 3 days. He can't stop talking about it at the table. I'm like, this is like people think that these high stakes pros have it all figured out. Everybody's different, and there's a lot of inefficiencies and emotional and performance and all this kind of stuff. And like I look at those guys and I'm like, I'm gonna eat this guy alive. You know what I mean? I bring it back to a competition. I'm like, okay, I run bad. Like, dude, when he runs bad, he freaks out. This guy's gonna buy me houses all over the freaking world. Like perfect. Like competition, right into it. You know what I mean? Like I just like I build this game within a game in these competitions between myself and the guys playing high stakes, and like I build my own little win rates and things that have nothing to do with poker wins and losses.
So powerful. Yeah, I feel like that kind of leaning into competition and making it like that. I'm trying to beat these people and win. Things are tough. It's a really interesting period because I feel like this is where you often separate yourself from the competition because everyone's playing great when they're on a heater, when they're getting great results. But when things aren't going well, how are you showing up? When you're having the worst results of your life, how are you showing up in those moments? I think another thing that goes really well alongside like lean into competition is the story narrative. Like, can you create like your hero's journey within the struggle? So when you're going through a tough time, realizing this is the part of the story where it gets interesting. If I ever go on a podcast and I'm talking about my story, I'll talk about this moment right here where I was going to quit and I didn't and I kept going. I think sometimes when life gets really tough, just remember like you're on that journey. In the tough parts, it's everything. It's the character forming period. It's the resilience building. It's when you look back at yourself with pride and what you've done, you go, that was the period that I know personally how tough it was. I went through it and I'm proud of myself. And I feel like if you can just lean into that just a little bit when things get tough, I feel like it's a really kind of proactive way to deal with those struggles in a good way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's harder said, or it's harder to do in practice, right? It's easy to feel sorry for yourself on day 12 of Jeju, when you're just getting like you're punched in the face every day or whatever. But that's definitely the goal, right? And that is the goalpost that you just have to strive for and push towards. And that's kind of how I feel is like if I get better at that every single time it happens, I'm going to just be so much better at it, dealing with it in 5 years and 7 years, as time goes on.
Yeah, it's that 1% mindset you mentioned in practice.
Yeah.
So for you, you've mentioned you do well with structure and you seem like someone who's got quite good habits, routines. So I'd like to dive into some of the kind of structures you created for yourself and what are the habits that have been most important for you in terms of improving your performance?
Yeah, good question. I think that the one of the first things that I had to kind of push back against was that everybody is just so different in what structure they like. Some people do like rest and do need rest. I have plenty of friends that go play a high stakes series and never study, but that's not me, right? Like I feel best. I feel most confident. I feel like I'm going to play my best when the entire time I'm at these series, I'm focused. And what that means is that when I bust the tournament, I'm immediately on my computer. I'm watching streams, I'm reviewing hands, I'm trying to get a feel for how these players feel and how are they playing in this moment. And I feel like in that structure, I get a really good edge. Like I guess that's how I feel. I think that like when I bust a tournament and other people are like going and have a glass of wine and having dinner with their family or whatever, and that's what they do when they bust. And when I bust, I go immediately to my computer And I'm like, okay, I'm going to prepare better for tomorrow over the next 4 hours. And I just grind hard in that time. I watch, I do all those things. I feel more prepared the next day. So like, I think it's about knowing yourself and knowing what structure and kind of habits are right for you. And for me, it's I like to grind when I grind. Like when I'm out playing a series, I don't like to have balance. I have plenty of friends that, you know, like I don't want to throw people under. Like the way that they do it isn't wrong, but the way that they like to do it is they like to enjoy the travel. You like, right? They like to like go see things in the city, go to the beach, go. I don't want it. I don't want that. I want you to put me in an isolated place where I have my room and I have where I go play poker. I will not leave. I barely eat. I barely do. That's what I love. I lose weight every single one of these trips, but like that's my process. That's the structure that I enjoy. And I don't need to see the sun and ground myself in these things to do things in the short term. Now, in those times of recovery, that's where I need to have those kind of things to recuperate because I am diminished after a series because of that.
Yeah, it ties into the war mode from the start and going into that kind of mindset proactively. And then when you come out of it to kind of find balance. But yeah, I love that you've just got that very, very clear. I think sometimes life gets easy when we limit choices. If we just go, right, I'm doing this, nothing else, life's so easy. When we've got loads of things we're balancing, that's when it's tough because your mind's always pulling you one way, pulling another. So I think even from a kind of mental kind of space perspective, you've got much more clarity when you're just doing one thing and not getting distracted by doing the grind hard and also trying to kind of create that balance as well. Now, you mentioned when you're watching the stream, you're trying to get in tune with how players feel. That got me curious to know what sort of things do you pick up and how does that impact how you might play those players later in the tournament?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I think of, and a lot of these things are a little bit of projections, and I have to be careful about that because I know that the things that I pay attention to are more the things that I would reciprocally feel, and people are built differently. But the number one thing, especially at Tritons or these high stakes series, that I feel or that I see that people feel is like, how are they handling the losses? Because your average iteration over the first 8 days is that you're down $500,000, and so like in that moment. Is it somebody like Chidwick that like he can max fire every day and it seemingly does not affect him at all if he's down 2 million or up 8 million or whatever the number is? Or is it a guy that like the money means a lot to him in this moment? And he passed on a couple bluffs. You know, he feels a little demoralized. He put his chips in a little bit funny where like he looked like he thought he was going to lose that all in. You know what I mean? Like you can feel it on people when like they're in this mindset. And when that's the case, it's so important to know that because if I know that this guy is like in a bad mindset, he's going to hero call me on the river more often. Like I'm going to go for bigger sizes because if he has a good bluff catcher, he's not going to think deeply about like, Justin's range feels like it should be like potting here. Why is it 4xing the river? Right? He's going to be like, I'm running bad again. How do I have the worst hand again in the spot and this guy's shoving 4x pot? Right? So it's like little nuanced things like that I think can like. Now the very best players, you have to be careful. Ike Haxton does not feel pain the same way that I feel pain of loss, right? And so like you have to be very, very careful with that. But I do think that looking for that and looking at the streams, how are they handling the pressure? I mean, here's a funny one for you. I wear this whoop and we're in a group chat with a bunch of guys that wear whoops at Tritons and whatnot. And I FT the 25K in March, okay? Igor Yurashevsky, I really like this guy. I look at my app in the morning, he's at the FT. 0% recovery. 0% recovery the night before the FT. So I'm immediately like, I wonder what happened. Like, is he sick? Is he diminished? Like what's going on? How did he get 0% recovery? He shows up to the table, he's like groggy, obviously slept like shit. He misclicks at this FT. I think he got like third, or he obviously he's a great player and did all these things, but like knowing that was actually unbelievably valuable. The fact that like he's just like diminished in this moment. He's a little bit fatigued because of whatever reason. Maybe he's sick. Maybe he went drinking last night. Who knows? But like he's probably not. You know, I'm probably not going to read into the fact that he bet 60% pot and not 80% pot on this turn. You know what I mean? He just put out a bet. Like he's tired, right? So I think like little things like that can really kind of push you in different directions in the margins.
So interesting. Yeah, I really found that fascinating. And I think a lot of people would be looking, like I said, they're watching the stream, they're probably watching the hands, watching the strategy. But it feels like for you, you're so much more curious about what they're feeling, how they experience losses, and how they're playing their strategy based on their states. So for you, what are some of the biggest state changes you're able to exploit? Is it when some people are being very passive? Do you notice when people are maybe not pulling triggers in spots? What are some of the things where you're watching the stream, you're like, oh, this guy, taking note, I will definitely be going at that one next time?
Yeah, I like to just like try to play a tilting strategy against guys that will tilt. You know, like you can do a lot of things in the game of poker, but it's really annoying to like have somebody put half your stack in. You know, it's pretty frustrating to like be short and face a min bet or face like a half pot, right? Like some of these guys that are maybe a little bit more theory oriented, like when they see you do something that isn't quite right, they kind of scoff, right? Like if they're fatigued. Like there's plenty of guys that are amazing theory players that don't have this, but there's certainly some that they're like, oh, this American guy, like he doesn't know what he's doing, right? And so like I try to lean into that and be like, okay, well, like if this guy I know is a pretty computer player, I'm going to try to do like some pretty funky stuff that I think is still good. It's still fine, but he's going to think it's stupid. And I think he might implode in that moment. Or maybe I'll induce a guy that I know that they're fatigued and they lean aggressive. I'm going to just like put more nutted hands into a strategy that should be more built around 58% equity hands, right? And it's like little things like that. Checking, I like that one too. Like there's plenty of things that are worth a block on the river or worth half pot or 60% on the river. But a lot of guys, when they're fatigued, they don't like to check back, jack high. And there's tons of spots in poker where whatever, they big bet flop, you call, turn goes check, check. And facing check, a button range is so wide, they can't just bluff their offsuit 8s and 9s and 10s, right? But the guy doesn't want to show down that he just like is on stream and he checks back jack 10 off. So then I move stuff from a block bet into a check and I play more check call. All sorts of just like little things like that.
How much are these live tells and field-based kind of tells lead into your decision making? Like, is it able to fully switch your strategy because you've got a strong read? Or are you making like small deviations here and there? Or does it obviously depend player to player? But I'm just trying to think with your decision making process, can some of these kind of field-based decisions, like someone's on tilt, someone's fatigued, can they completely switch your strategy to an inverse line to really exploit that?
Yeah, that's my goal. I think that I'm still naturally a little bit too pulled towards playing well, right? Pulled towards playing a theoretically sound strategy. But like anybody that studies hard understands that the tiniest of, like the game is so sensitive, especially like pre-flop ICM and things. If a guy overbluffs by the tiniest amount, you just get to 4-bet the deck on them. But that's hard to do in real life, you know? So I think that eventually it will. Eventually I will get to the point where I can completely change my strategy and really go after somebody. Now I think I'm probably like somewhere in the middle where it will change like decisions, but I think I'm taking a very, very tiny EV loss with my deviation in hopes that it just works better against the player in game.
Rene, I know you have a very thought through decision making process. When you play live, how much does how people feel weigh into your decisions?
When I play live, well, that's already gonna be a very limited amount of time. So I try to kind of stay away from it and kind of acknowledge the fact that I'm not knowledgeable. Like I remember actually one hand in Vegas, like the guy put me all in, and I was looking at it. And it's like he looks a bit weird. It's a bit funny, but I don't know what this means because I have no baseline. I don't know how to interpret this information. So let's just stay with the facts, the things that I actually do know, right? So it's also obviously, you know, Justin is very knowledgeable in this area. So when you know the baseline and you know the adjustments, obviously it's great to use it. But when you don't, you know, it's like playing with fire and you're just randomly guessing things, right? But I really like what Justin mentioned. He said, when fatigued, leans aggressive. These are like interesting reads, right? So you can have reads on players, and then you can have reads on players on their C game, on their fatigued game, right? Oh, when he's fatigued or when he's tilted, or oh, when he's on a big heater, tends to, you know, find funky plays, right? So yeah, I definitely think it's very very valuable, and obviously the next level of getting reach. I had a coaching session actually a couple of weeks ago with actually an old student of mine who now coaches me. So, then you know that you've done a good job. And he also said he was always good at this. And he said, when they start to click a bit faster, this was online, right? Oh yeah, when they start to act a bit faster, you know it's coming. Stuff like this. And I'm like, I don't know it's coming. It's not really my strength. So definitely, but it's actually been something that, especially after that coach says, I've been paying way more attention to kind of feel. And online, obviously maybe a bit more difficult, but kind of feel which state he's in. So you have to really pay attention to like the game flow, and online specifically like the speed with which they suddenly start to play. They suddenly start to speed up, for example. It's like, I never really noticed it. And now that I started to pay attention to this last week, I'm like, interesting, there's something here. And that then opens up the game again to many possibilities. And that's kind of also what I hear so far from Justin's story, that's it's those unlimited opportunities that gets him excited. I mean, he has a smile on his face right now.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the online speed because like people can really get me online when I play now. Like I used to be more like that, like not much deviation, but now like there's certain things with the speed of clicking that like I will just completely change my strategy. And if people, I'll like for example, is like when somebody has a very polarized range on the turn, and then it's a board changing river, and it acts very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, like, can you really think that fast with your thin value? Like the board just completely changed, and you had a polarized range on the turn. Like, it kind of felt like you had your mind made up on the turn with what you wanted to do on the river, which probably means you're going to be bluffing. Right? Like little things like that, like people can really get me with timing, I think. I don't play a ton online now, but when I do, I like that stuff a lot. So it does definitely make me smile that you're kind of exploring some of that stuff because it's fun. It's a fun game within the game.
Yeah, I mean, and in there, I like some quote basic timing tells, obviously, I would take in consideration, but then, you hear how someone else approaching it. It's like, that's next level. We're talking like reads upon reads upon reads. It's like, okay, this is endless possibilities. I'm wondering if you reflect on your career when working your way through the ranks to reach the stakes that you play today. Which jump in stakes did you find the hardest?
I think the 10Ks, starting to play like the tougher 10K live. And I think it was, I mean, playing the main event obviously is different, but like playing like an Aria 100-person 10K, I think that felt like a jump to me. The rake is very low. So that's definitely one thing, but you are battling a lot, and it's a more reg field game. And especially when I first started to play these, like nowadays it's a little bit different because like the very best players got too rich and did all these other things where like they don't show up for the 10Ks anymore, but in the time, like Poker Masters or whatever's going on, there was a 100K main event in that series. So it started at 10Ks and then it went 25, 50, 100 or something like that. And so they would try to win the purple jacket and come play the 10s. So like you're playing a 10, which is a small buy-in for the Chidwicks, Coons, Petrangelos, etc., and a big buy-in for me. And I think that like that was a big jump and one that I got kind of smashed in those games early on. And that's why it means so much to me to like do well in those games, even though they're, I think, objectively significantly softer than maybe like, I mean, I don't know if they're softer, but you know what I mean? Like they don't have the most elite players in them anymore as often, but that jump felt big and I learned a lot through those experiences.
It's funny, yeah, because like they now kind of, for example, play higher. So the field is softer, but then like the challenge is not necessarily your opponents, but then now the challenge again becomes showing up for yourself, right? Can I still bring that A game? Now the field is softer. It's no longer, the opponents is no longer the problem. Now I'm the problem. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the competition within it, right? Like, can I have the highest win rate in those games now? Like, can I beat those games for all the dollars? And that's why I have, I just won one recently in the Masters, and like it meant so much to me because I haven't done that, and it's been so painful to not have a good win rate in those games since the games have especially gotten softer. And so I'm like, man, like why can't I just like why am I not the biggest winner in this game? You know what I mean? Like that caused me a lot of pain in the last couple of years. And so now I still just feel so focused almost more, even though it's a softer game. It's like, can I beat this for every dollar? Can I have the highest win rate? Can I be the best player in the studio? You know what I mean? Like those are the goals now. It's not about trying to eke out a 4% win rate, because like 4% is just not an exciting win rate.
And there's a secret, right? You raise the goal. Other people might come in and like, oh, it's got softer now, so let's go grind. And they're like, oh, why is my win rate not that high? Well, you don't have the goal that you just set. You wanted every fucking dollar, and that raised the necessity to show up, the necessity to look for, the read on if he was fatigued or in which state he was today, or so you go beyond like just your quote quote normal game. Because you have a higher necessity to show up. Yeah, that's really good. You mentioned that, in the beginning you got smashed. What were kind of the leaks or flaws in your approach that you had to fix to establish yourself at that limit, and how did you go about fixing them?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it was mental performance. I had a very strong theoretical background. I love to study, and I think that was my strength. And where my weakness was in execution, especially live one tabling. I felt a little bored. Like I felt a little like lost in those first moments playing live. I mean, it wasn't like it takes time to get used to going from online to live. It really does. And I think that I struggled with it more than I thought that I would, just with everything. And so I think that a huge fix was leaning into that emotional side of the game and understanding that like now the way that I think about theory is that like my intuition about the theory and how I feel should dictate my strategy. It's like if I can train so hard that my whole being feels like I have a pretty good hand to bluff with, well, that emotion means I should probably bluff it like 30% of the time, right? Like if I'm fully in tuned, like it's impossible to understand these frequencies. And so you have to kind of try to build it. And I think that once I built it into something emotional, then I started to play well, play much better and execute much better. Because it's like, okay, I knew that if I thought a hand was a good bluffing hand, like I need to do it 20 because my frequencies are way off. And then by the time I kind of grew out of that, it was like, okay, this feeling that I have on the river, that means I have an indifferent bluff catcher, right? Like this feeling of like, man, this spot sucks. I have okay cards. My side card's okay. It's like, well, that probably tells you what it is, right? If you have that emotion and your call is worth 2.5 bigs against a reg, you're not working hard enough. Like you're not good enough at the game theoretically, right? Your emotions should track the game from a deep theory perspective. And I think that that's kind of what it took to feel more successful and to feel more confident live and to feel like I could play at that level.
In terms of the difference between, especially when you started to move higher up to even higher high rollers, right? Fields get smaller. What's kind of the strategical adjustments that you started to take in consideration when playing like these smaller high roller tournaments compared to like larger field MTTs?
Yeah, I would say ICM. I mean, like playing final tables, playing bubbles, playing 2 tables left. All of those things just became so much more important. I mean, before I played WSOP in the summer, I don't touch ICM for probably 6 weeks or something because it's just like you're playing 2,000 person tournaments constantly. And I still love that stuff, but it's just not as an important concept to be great at in that moment or to be super sharp in. But these small field tournaments, I had to get much better at that. And I definitely, I would say, was weaker coming from like a mid-staked ABI online tournament thing because like I was playing an average field size of over 500 or something. And so I really had to spend more time on some of those concepts.
Obviously, when, the buy-in gets higher and the foods get smaller, the competition also gets tougher. What do you think sets like the high roller regs and like the tougher competition apart from like your average player? What makes the best so tough to play against?
I would say that the thing that comes to mind is complexity. Like, you can beat the mid stakes with a bunch of different jabs. Like I see bet small a lot because they don't fight hard enough. I barrel the turn for a too big size and then I give up river, right? Like you can like have these tricks and these jabs, But I think that what makes the very best players so tough, and what I really strive for, is I want to make mistakes in every single direction. I want to be too tight in some spots. I want to be too loose. I want to overcall. I want to overfold. I want to underbluff. I want to overbluff. I want to have good check raise strategies. I want to be able to push my equity in some spots OOP that might be less comfortable. And so you have all of these different very intricate frameworks of how you want to beat players and how you want to beat your competition. And I think that that's what makes people so tough. Ike Haxton is not trying to simplify a strategy. He is not being like, oh, I can see bet small and be fine here. He's like, well, I think my hand could be 120 the flop at 12%, and I rolled a 12. So I guess I'm playing that strategy. You know what I mean? So I think that the complexity and in the way, all the different ways they can get you. I think that's what's so tough about the best players.
You actually mentioned also in the questionnaire that we send out that you prefer a more complex strategy with a wide variety of lines over a simplified strategy. Why do you relate to that approach more? Is it for kind of the reason you just explained that's kind of just also what the better players do? And what advantage do you think it gives you?
It's also just more theoretically sound. Yeah. Sorry, we cut a little bit there. I think that I like it because it's just more theoretically sound. It really allows you to understand the strengths of different strategies. If you never lead out of position as the pre-flop caller, you're just holding yourself back. You're playing too simple of a strategy and you're giving up EV in really simple spots that can hurt you. And so it allows you to maybe be a little bit more defensive or a little bit where, oh, I'm not going to make a mistake, right? But I think that if you're willing to make big mistakes and you just don't care about it, that's when you can elevate and play these really complicated and difficult strategies, because there's the theory standpoint, but it's also about if you play a really complicated strategy, you can also get a feel for what is going to be tough against this player. This last FT I played, I played a bunch of amazing players, but they all play differently. And when you play a really complicated strategy, I can bob and weave and do one thing against one person and then completely different against somebody else. You know what I mean? And so if people are going to bet too much, perfect. I know how to play that strategy. I know how to beat that. I'm gonna check a little more often, and I'm gonna use really small check raise very small check raise sizes. And good luck. Good luck having a 100% flop when check to bet against me. Good luck. You know what I mean? If that's how you want to play, I'm gonna try to bury you. You know what I mean? I'm gonna try to beat you in every single way I possibly can. And so I think that that's what I really love about complication and complicated strategies.
Are you grinding hard, studying solvers, reviewing hands, but still not getting those results that you know you're capable of? You're putting in the time and effort, but without clear direction, that effort does not pay off. That is why I created the Mechanics Leakbuster program, which is the exact system I use to make over 7 figures playing online poker and have since taught to hundreds of students so they could do the same. Through our Leak Finder stats and pop-ups, you will gain clarity on your biggest leaks and tendencies, insights on how your strategies have been performing in-game, and the impact variance has had on your results. But knowing your stats is only the beginning. In the program, we dig deep into the root causes behind your leaks and tendencies and use a proven 7-step system to fix them for good and gain the skills to improve and continuously evolve as a poker player. You'll study more effectively, overcome leaks and tendencies that felt impossible to break, and rebuild trust and confidence in your game, finally seeing your hard work pay off as you move up the stakes. So if you're ready to stop guessing and start improving with clarity, break through the patterns that have been holding you back, and take your game to the next level, join the Mechanics Leakbuster program using the link down below. And for the first month of enrollment only, you will get access to weekly group coaching calls with me and get a chance to win a one-on-one coaching session in which I personally review your game. So don't miss out on this limited opportunity. Join the Mechanics Leakbuster program using the link down below, and looking forward to seeing you guys in there.
How do you become good at playing complex? Because I'm sure people are listening and obviously everyone wants to play like that, right? But they simple and dumb it down because their brain can't handle it, basically, right? So how does
how do you make complex actually be simpler? Is it like the framework from which people are thinking that it's wrong, that they're trying to memorize, and is it like that's kind of the flaw?
Yeah, great question. It reminded me of a quote that I just heard recently from like this guy said this in like the 1990s, and he pretty much, he was like a Harvard biologist. I think his name is E.O. Wilson, and it was something to the effect of like, we have infinite information, or like there's so much information, but we have a starvation for knowledge, and that's how I feel about the current day. He said it much prettier. I'm trying to find the right words. Like plethora of information, but starvation of knowledge. And that's how I feel about poker in a way, where like I feel fortunate that I came up just before the like public solver, public database kind of era. But what it's done is it's just given everybody so much information and this starvation for knowledge. What do I do? How do I do this? How do I like deep knowledge of poker is difficult, and it doesn't really come from a bunch of different informations. And so the thing that I would say to somebody that wants to play more complex is understand the why behind why things are occurring theoretically. That was something that Acevedo really drilled into me. He's like, the goal isn't to memorize and execute a solver output. The goal is to train yourself to become a solver, so that when you have your own abstraction in real life, you can build a great strategy. I think that this huge amount of information that's out there, it's caused us to like split. And what we have now, in my mind, is you have poker players and you have data analysts, and they're just not the same. Data analysts are amazing coaches. They can look at an output and say, all right, so our overpairs are going to bet in order of how much protection they need. And we like these types of hands because they have backdoor flush draws, and they can break down the data. But that is a completely different skill set from looking at an abstraction, looking at information that you're taking in, and building a strategy, right? I think those are two completely different skill sets. And for me, I used to be a data analyst. I used to love the theory, understanding and breaking down why it was. And it wasn't until I became a poker player that I think I was able to kind of reach more of my potential. And so that'd be my push for other players, is to focus on building your own strategies, focusing on why the solver is doing what it's doing, and try to become a solver. Try to be able to take in all the information and build a strategy. Whatever it looks like, just build it and then test it and then do it over and over and over.
Do you have to be a data analyst first before you can evolve to a poker player? Because you said it did help you in a certain way. But do you think more that the problem is that players are kind of stuck there and don't evolve?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I think that maybe they have some performance things. I think that I had some performance things early on where like I was so obsessed with being right or playing well or taking a frequency that's in there in the computer, and I didn't fully understand that like just because I'm 3-betting the king 6 off at proper frequency doesn't mean I'm playing a good strategy. Right? My bluff to value ratio is so high because I'm taking way too many offsuit bluffs. Like the deep foundational principles of game theory are lost when you're trying to see if your hand does this thing or that thing. So I think that like some of the guys that, something I think about is that how many guys have really gone and reached the high stakes in the last 10 years? If the tools and all these things are so much better than they were, like, why haven't more kids just come up and beaten the high stakes for as much as possible? And my belief is that it's because those guys are poker players. Like, those guys understand the deep theory of, okay, this guy's capped. I'm going to use a big size, right? Like, I'm going to realize my equity against that player way better than that player because their turn check frequency is high. So, like, why do we call so much imposition against a C-bet? We're supposed to over-realize our equity on almost every single board. But, like, if the guy plays too high of a turn barrel, you're either going to need to float the turn really wide, or you're going to need to like maybe overfold the flop and have an easier time, right? There's so many different little pushes and pulls. And so I think that you can get there as a poker player from experience, but it is much easier when like you're just diving into the theories and trying to understand, why is this happening? Why does MDF not matter on flops? Why does, the gapping of different flops cause me to have a higher check frequency? Like, why is all this stuff occurring?
You mentioned that I think it was 2018 Michael, I forgot his last name. That was kind of your GTO coach, right? It seemed like he had a very big influence in this involvement of you.
Yeah. I think he like just showed me pile solver and munker solver and like really how to use these tools in a reasonable way. Like I remember early on, people had I wasn't in poker, so I don't know exactly what it was like for the best players, but like the average person at a pile solver sim, I don't think people understood that like if you didn't allow for early actions, it really messed up the game tree, right? Like if you don't allow OOP to check raise just because he didn't check raise in real life, doesn't mean the sim you're looking at is good, right? Like you need to build good data and like focus on having good, low exploitability data to have any benefits from that stuff. And so I think that he really helped me kind of understand what's important about the solver, why, like how is it working, how to use it to get better, how to not care about, looking up a hand to tell me that, oh, I played it right, I should feel good about that, and to focus more on like, okay, well, what does my global frequency look like? Because if I hit my global frequency or my bluff to value ratio or any of these things right, that stuff is so much more important than finding the perfect combo, right? You can find the right slivers of certain combos, but when your C-bet frequency is supposed to be 60 and you C-bet at 80, you're way off. You know what I mean? So I think that he really helped. He helped kind of drive in what's important about solvers to me.
I think also an important point that you made, I think because it was funny because you mentioned about the pre and post public solver era, whereas I'm even of the pre-solver era. So now we added another era. So we have pre-solver era,
Sure.
then we have post-solver era, and now we have public solver era. And basically it gets easier and easier, and therefore we use our brain less and less, and therefore we get worse and worse, right? It's kind of what you're saying. Actually, we had a podcast with what was his name? The Poker Terminator. I forgot his name, but we talked a lot about AI, and there also we talked about like, with AI and stuff, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's the same with like solvers, right? If you're just trying to copy the information from the solver, you don't try to problem solve for yourself. And actually, I saw a study now of, I think it was MIT, that's saying the same with ChatGPT. It's infecting our brains, it's making us dumber because we don't use it, right? And like if we talk about pre-solver area, we had to figure all this shit out by ourselves. We had to think action, reaction. If I do this, then he does that. How would that impact my strategy? What would actually be good here, right? So we trained that way of thinking.
Yeah.
And like you said, in the newest generation, super lazy. They just open the solution and they are not breaking that down and playing with it. And even actually in setting up, I've learned a lot by setting up PO sims and making mistakes in that. Like you said, oh, fuck, I didn't allow him to do this. But now the solver found, oh, so this is interesting. So if he doesn't do this, now suddenly the solver recalibrated and found a new way. I made a mistake in setting it up, but I learned something about, again, like the mechanics of the game. This is actually also where the name Mechanics of Poker came from, right? Because we teach the mechanics of the game, which is way more interesting than, oh, here's a strategy, go execute.
Yeah. Good luck, buddy. Good luck. It's too hard. You know what I mean? And like, you also have to do it with the guy staring at you, with pressure, with all these other things. Like, if you don't have a deep understanding, I think you're in. I mean, there's a couple talent cases, right? There's other ways to do it, but the way that I know how to do it, and the way that I believe in, is to just have a really deep, good understanding. I mean, dude, it used to take 2 hours to set up one Munker solver pre-flop ICM sim. You know what I mean? Like you learned really quickly how much it mattered about their 3-bet size and how you have a completely different response with 4 left when you don't feel the same ICM pressure as 8 left. And like you really had to care when you would build a database because it took the amount of computational power and the amount of resources and hours and all that kind of stuff was so high that what else are we going to do? You're going to sit there and watch it run? No, you're going to be thinking about, okay, I wonder what's going to happen. And you're trying to figure it out as this thing takes 48 hours to give me one ICM preflop output. You know what I mean? Like it's
and then when it's there, you're gonna study every single bit of it. Whereas now you just look at the sims like, oh yeah, okay. It's like we have so much access to it. But I get it. Like sometimes it would run a book, but halfway you would already look, oh yeah, look, it's starting to lean that way. What does that mean? You're activating your brain. And it's funny also that you mentioned like a reason why people need simplified strategies is because they're approaching the game wrong. They think actually that they're trying to make the game easier, but it's actually only making it harder. Whereas what they think is harder is understand the game at a deeper level. That actually makes the game easier, because if you understand the game at a deeper level, you can execute complex strategies easier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, I'll talk about Jonathon Little a little bit again with this thing, because he used to just have me take a range chart and start from pre-flop. And this is what they, like pokercoaching.com, this is a big like homework aspect of it. And I was doing this just over and over and over, where you'd start pre-flop and you would just say, okay, I'm raising these hands. Then you get a flop. You'd categorize your hands and you'd say, okay, I'm going to be aggressive with these hands and then passive with these hands. And then the turn. And you'd be like, okay, well, I need to have roughly, this is like, a little old school, but 2-to-1 bluff to value ratio on the flop, 1-to-1 on the turn, and then 2-to-1 value to bluff for pot on the river. And that was how we would structure out every single board. And you would do it by hand. And like, if you can't do that, why are you looking at a solver output? If you can't understand, like, I mean, this MDF on the flop thing is like such a pet peeve of mine now. Like, people are like, oh, well, like you bet quarter pot, so I need to like make sure I like MDF. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you obviously have no idea what you're saying. Like if the board is bad for you, you're gonna fold so like 80% of the time. If the board is good for you, you're gonna over defend MDF. Like, it's not about MDF. It's about, how much equity you're realizing and like how the board's going to change and all these other concepts. And so like that stuff is just everything when it comes to poker, because then you can get put as that poker player in any situation and have this toolbox to be like, okay, well, this guy's like Reki and guess what? My hand shouldn't continue flop, but like the guy's not going to barrel me off. So like the reason why I fold pocket fours on 8-5 deuce to a big flop c-bet is because he's supposed to aggress a lot, and I'm going to have a really hard time playing this hand like on future streets. But you're telling me the guy's like going to check back the turn every time he doesn't have anything? Okay, I call, right? I'm going to get to realize my equity. And like, unless you're really thinking about the deep mechanics, you're like, oh, my hand obviously folds flop because of these reasons, so I fold. It's like, what are we doing? Like, that's not how you beat poker. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't take anything. It doesn't take any real effort.
Yeah, and I can see like especially what you mean with like the post-public solver era. Yeah, like people don't do this type of exercise anymore. Same with like, especially on the river, like bluff catching, bluffing. People go to the solver and say, well, it bluffs sometimes, and then that's their answer. Whereas I'm old school, man. I say, listen, you open a notepad, you get your calculator out. How often is he supposed to fold? Right? You start visualizing the range. You put stripes. Okay, he has 2 combos, 3 combos. Well, okay, so he's folding. Same with bluff catching. Oh, he needs X amount of bluffs. So I'm just gonna open my notepad. I'm gonna find the bluffs, and they'll say, okay, it was a plus if he call. I'm not going to the solver and say, well, I have to call it sometimes. That's not how you get good at poker.
Exactly.
If every time you go to bluff catching spots and you count out the combos, at some point you become good at it. Like nowadays, it's more of a feel. Like I'm still sometimes obviously counting combos, but it's more of a feel because I've done this so many times. I've trained this process, and you can't learn that from a solver. It's the same. Like when you were talking about like building range, I remember in the past with Flopzilla, I was building I think it was a small blind calling range, and I would build the range and I would randomize flops, and I would see if on all flops I had good board coverage. So this is like before solvers even, right? So it's like, You're thinking about this stuff, right? You're trying to build your ranges in optimal ways, And that was like pre-solver because that's what we had, You had to think about these things. But in people's defense, and that's also kind of the problem that you mentioned earlier, there is an info overload, right? So the skill nowadays is no longer the information. The skill is more in filtering. So maybe we can help the audience a little bit, right? You mentioned already MDF, but what is actually important? Maybe we can give some guidelines here.
Yeah, I would say that like one of the most important things is to be able to understand why and to execute that strategy in real life. I would way prefer somebody be like, okay, there's plenty of spots on the flop where you could pot, right? I mean, in cash games, you see this all the time. You see the very best players in the cash game challenges and all these things, 1.2x pot flop, okay? But like, that's a very hard strategy in my mind. But like, it's very, very difficult to take something that's pretty out of my comfort zone, do it because I think it's good, control my frequencies, and then play well on turns and rivers. And so what I think that is important is that like having thought and deep thought about what your strategy that you want to use looks like, and then build the combos, right? Like have something that you're comfortable with and familiar with. And as you become more comfortable and more familiar, then the complexity can build, right? But looking at a combo and saying, I want to do this, and not understanding like how to play turns and rivers, that's going to just be hard. It's going to be a very difficult thing to do. So I think if you focus on like, okay, focus on range advantage, focus on nut advantage, focus on how the board's going to change on turns and rivers, and what does that mean for my value hands? Am I going to be able to go 3 streets very often? If so, I probably don't need that much protection on the flop. I can use a smaller size. Man, ace 7, 8, there's a lot of runouts where my ace king or ace jack off, like my ace jack off, doesn't get to go for 3 streets. Okay, well, use that. Size up the flop. Limit the SPR. Make it a shallower SPR on the river so that you can go for 3 streets more often. I think like really focusing on the incentives of your strategy and kind of how to build that is the way to approach it. And also constantly test yourself and quiz yourself and try to be able to articulate your strategy. Don't play a hand and go look at an output. Focus on the fact of like, okay, why did I call him? I think he's over bluffing. Okay, perfect. Tell me which combos you think he's over bluffing with. Do you think that is it that he's not going thin enough for value, or is that he can't ever check turn with jack high because he wants to do the overbet? You know what I mean? He's going to have too much air in that kind of strategy. Build it out by hand. Do it over and over and over and over, and then just check your work. Check it, iterate, tweak things, and go from there. Because I really do think that the importance about it is learning everything you can from the theoretical side, but figuring out how that looks like in real life for you under pressure, in big moments, etc. Because like I'm telling you, if you give me a spot and you give me an hour to think about it, I can probably build a pretty good range, right? I think I'm going to be able to build better ranges than my opponents on average. But like, can I do that when the pressure is on and I'm fatigued and whatnot? Maybe I just lean into my strengths a little bit and decide, okay, I'm not going to play B40 in the spot because I'm just not as used to it. I'm going to just play B25 and B60 and kind of separate my ranges the way I like on flops and go from there.
I think also something very important that you mentioned there I think a lot of players, they look at the solver output and they see it kind of as, okay, this is like my coach telling me, okay, this is the strategy I have to play. Whereas, for example, you mentioned A7, 8, it's like, oh, okay, I cannot really go to 3 streets. That sucks. I kind of do want to get more money, and how can I do that? Can I maybe tweak something? Like I said, oh, maybe I should start with a big size. You're not just saying, oh, the solver does this. You're trying to think, but I don't want this. How can we maybe do something here, right? You're thinking creative. You're thinking, okay, well, but what if I change this? What if I change that? Can we find ways around it, right? And also what you mentioned in terms of, with finding like the combos, in order to understand, I think the most, I always say, okay, the people ask me like, should I play this strategy? I say, do you understand it, right?
Yeah.
You cannot execute a strategy that you don't understand. Yeah, you might be able to memorize the flop, but you have to understand why that combo is in there and what its purpose is and why it's like what properties it has, because only then, and like what the strategy is trying to achieve, it's very important. Because if you understand what it's trying to achieve, you will be able to better play turn and river and also understand when that's achieved. Like what was the purpose there? So you're not on a later street doing something completely different with the hand that was not really the reason why it was there.
Exactly. And you can extrapolate it, right? I mean, the game is too vast. Like, you need to understand the ace 7, 8 in that spot with ace jack. You know what? It's kind of also like jack 8, 5. It might not look the same, but like your incentives are quite similar. Like you want to pile money in early. And maybe you want to put in more money on jack 8, 5, but the same incentive is there. The other thing that I would add to that, and I love everything that you're kind of saying from that, but the other thing that I would add is that spend time understanding how sensitive the solver is. Spend time in PO, doing your own work, understanding that like, okay, the reason why I'm barreling the turn so much is because my hand does a good job of unblocking his offsuit folding range. But what happens if the guy doesn't defend his offsuit 3s in the big blind pre? What's that going to do to your overall strategy? Are you targeting enough folds, right? Like, you need to cutoff versus button. I think about this one a lot. Where's our advantage cutoff versus button? Because it's a tough spot to play. You're out of position with a super wide range, and it's like, okay, well, we open offsuit 9x and all of our offsuit 10x, and they don't ever call an offsuit 9x, maybe ace 9 off, and they call less of their offsuit 10x. And this guy, he's pretty 3-bet happy, so I think that like he has way less 10x. Well, guess what? I'm going to be very aggressive on 9-9-7, but I'll probably be way more passive on Jack-Jack-7. It doesn't really feel that way, but when you start to think about sensitivities and you think about where your advantages in your range are, like all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to understand the situation you're in real life. And always focus on what you're targeting. I think that's, Petrangelo and I Petrangelo, I don't want to say I talked about this. Petrangelo helped me with this. And then we've talked more since about it. But one of my favorite things about defense is to think about what is my weakest defend on the flop. Because if you can constantly identify when the board is whatever, ace-7-3, and you're up against a low jack, what your weakest defend is, and then button versus big blind, what your weakest defend is, that just starts to really help you figure out your overall range and your overall strategy. You're like, okay, like I want to defend 9-8 off with a backdoor versus the button because his range is wider, I have more equity, but I definitely can't defend that versus like U8. And so now it starts to really help you understand, kind of how to actually build those strategies and why that stuff's happening.
It was funny because when you said a7-3 and you were like bottom defend, I literally thought 8-9 off. And then you mentioned 8-9 off, and I was like, well, it's pretty tight versus like the low jack. So great minds think alike. You mentioned like you had a lot of mentors. I was curious, like what has been like one of the biggest strategical breakthrough moments in your career? Something that you learned that you were like, oh wow, this changes everything for me.
Yeah. It's a bit of a simple one, but sometimes it's good to get reminded of the simple ones. And Brock Wilson is very good at this. He's a good buddy of mine, American player. And he is, I don't want to overshare. I won't say which direction, but he's pretty good at understanding that like if the guy is going to overfold by 1%, the adjustment isn't to bluff 10% more. The adjustment is to bluff everything, right? Or if the guy's going to overcall by 2%, once again, the adjustment isn't to bluff 5% less. It's to literally never bluff, right? It's like he's over defending. He's calling you too much. And I think that that was a pretty good breakthrough for me because I think that, bluff catching is a difficult thing. And it's a really hard thing in the public solver era because, man, it is so easy to show that the hand that you called with could be good if they're bluffing. You know what I mean? Like, you have great blockers and great properties to call the river with. And when the guy's not bluffing enough, like, you're literally just scorching money. And I actually think that there's a step in there, too, that was important because let's say that they play perfectly. So you're playing a computer and you have a bluff catcher on the river. And you're supposed to, let's just say, call all of them half the time, or whatever, you know what I mean? And you don't call them at all right? The EV of your strategy doesn't lose any EV, okay? And that was kind of counterintuitive to me the first time. And that's like an old Will Tipton concept. I forget what he calls it, but it's like, I forget the term he uses, but essentially it's like you don't start losing more EV until they adjust their strategy. So like if you think the guy is an amazing player and he's structuring a good river strategy, you can fold every single bluff catcher and it doesn't affect the EV of your strategy, okay? And so like I think that plus the adjusting on rivers was a big thing for me because it really helped me believe like, okay, I can range call this guy here. I can range fold this guy here. I can range bluff this guy, in the belief to take the lever and just crank it to 100 in one of the directions, I think was really important for me.
Next up is Coinpoker. Coinpoker is the fastest growing poker room in the world right now. In a world where site seems to care less and less about the players, Coinpoker is showing good promise, listening to the community, and provide a safe and sustainable playing environment going forward. Join the action, get 33% rakeback and 150% deposit bonus using the code TMOP or register using the link down below in the description. How would you
obviously, like in poker, strategies, metas, they changed a lot, right, over the years. How would you describe the current meta in poker, and how do you think it's changed, and where do you see it's going?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think I'm going to preface it with the fact that I think one of the biggest things that's lost when people look at high stakes, and I'm sure the same thing occurs in cash, and that's that people think that because the solvers are out there, people play the same. And that could not be further from the truth. There are so many styles of players. If you watch Amadi play an FT, and you compare that to the way Ponikovs plays an FT, and then you do that to Chris Brewer and to, Petrangelo, like these guys are clearly approaching it differently if you really, look into it. And I think that, so in terms of the meta, I want to state that first because there's so many different styles that are currently kind of at play. But I would say that things just like kind of come and go out of style. Like I think that people realize that these offsuit hands, especially in ICM, like to 3-bet bluff a lot. And so I think that like in similar stack spots, people started 3-betting way too much, in these spots. And I think that like there's always this iteration where it's going to turn, and people are now playing maybe a little bit too tight in these spots, and they're not bluffing enough because like people are gambling too much or whatnot. So I think that like the tiniest of metas in terms of how aggressive people are pre-flop and how they approach final tables, I think that that's going to be a lot different in some years. Like if you look at the Tritons now you have like soft hand for hand right in the money. And in these big field events, it's pretty rough at times because like you're 50 people left, and if one table gets 2 hands ahead, or if you're 2 hands ahead of a table, you kind of just stop and wait while they catch up. And I think that's because people were like stalling a lot. But it makes no sense. Like if you're one of the best players, 45 left, it literally doesn't matter what your stack size is. You want to be playing as many hands as possible. Like the win rate that you can achieve is so much higher than the benefits that you have from 45 to 20 or whatnot. And so I think that's something that's probably going to be changing in my mind, at least, because like it's just so clear that you want to play fast if you think you have a big edge. Having the chips 18 left is so important. It's so important to have a big stack final 2 tables. It's so important to have a big stack at the FT. And so I think that the way that we view risk reward and the way that we kind of approach taking on variance in tournaments, I assume that still has a long way to go in terms of like the meta.
Obviously, when you try to adapt to metas and you try to stay ahead, you experiment different strategies, counter strategies. What has been one of the most controversial strategies that you've experimented with, if you think back, and which one was short lived and which one actually stood the test of time?
I thought that you could jam the big blind against a button open for 30 with any 2 cards, and I think that that's it had its time and its place. Like your pre-solver era, finding auto profit spots used to be unbelievably beneficial and common among top players, and I started to get addicted to this like auto profit thought, and I think I kind of overlooked that like, okay, well, it is profitable, but that doesn't mean it's not profitable to call, right? You can make more calling than jamming on the player, and so like if it would go button raise small blind call, like I would jam on that just ridiculously wide because I just thought these ranges can't they can't defend against it. So I would say that one kind of came and went. I still use some of those things, but I'm much more careful with the usage. One that I tried that stayed with me, I think I was pretty quick to be one to fight exceptionally hard for pots and 3-bet pots in tournaments. I remember a hand I played against Chewy, a number of years ago, that I 3-bet ace king off. He called and the board came like 10-3-3-7 deuce. And I went bet jam for value. And like it looked ridiculous at the time. But now that, we spend a little bit more time looking at the way people are building their ranges and whatnot, like the amount that you have to fight, especially in late position, out of position, 3-bet pots in tournaments is just absolutely crazy. Well, like the value thresholds are not intuitive to most people, at least. So I think that was one that I did that I think stays with me a little bit. Like being really willing to go for super thin value in these spots, being willing to fight really hard in position against these bets. Like when a guy 3-bets a really polar range out of position and you peel in position, it is just going to be so hard for them to play turns and rivers. They have king 6 off, king 4 off, the reason why they 3-bet that range is because they don't care that much about playability. They just want to make top pair or not make top pair. You're playing a short, shallow SPR. And when that's the case, your in position job is to force them to play turns and rivers, right? Because like that is the deficiency in their strategy. And so I think that was one that, fighting hard and 3-bet pots of shallow SPRs is one that I kind of messed around with that ended up being a really good strategy.
You do a good job at explaining a lot of things in poker. And obviously, you already mentioned, right? You're involved at poker coaching. You do a lot of poker coaching. In your experience working with players, what are the most common leaks you see, and how do you go about improving those?
Most common leaks. Caring too much about what people think about their hands. Caring too much about what the solver says or what they should do or what they, you know what I mean? Like all those emotional things. I think that stuff just really gets player 4 through 8. You know, and it got me when I was 4 through 8. You know what I mean? When I was really trying to climb. I think that those things are just really common pitfalls that you have to get out of your mind. You have to be okay with making mistakes. And I really do believe that like you want to make mistakes in every direction. I one time in the Bahamas overheard some players talking about a hand I played. And they were in a different study group than myself. And they pretty much said something to the effect of like, oh yeah, you can never fold a bluff catcher in that spot to him. And it made me immediately, I was just walking by and I heard them talking about this. And it immediately put a light bulb. And I was just like, I cannot give people adjustments. Like, I cannot be known to be just like too happy to bluff in these spots. And making mistakes in every direction really does that because you're going to make mistakes. You need to be a pip too tight. You need to be a pip too loose. You need to make mistakes in all these different directions and be okay with it and just iterate it over and over and over. I think that mistakes and failure and those things are incredibly important for some of the people I've worked with. And I think that you have to be able to push through that, and you have to have that self-belief and the work ethic to build a strategy that you understand and that you love and that you want to play and that you want to execute, and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's great info. I think it applies also to all formats. Let's say I would be interested in showing up at the next Triton stop. Obviously, I'm already a knowledgeable player, but specialized in a different format, right? Cash games. Let's say you would give me 3 coaching sessions to prepare me for Triton. What topics would you cover?
Short stack ICM play for definitely at least 2 of them. Maybe adjustments from deep stack to mid stacked, and some of the things that you need to do post flop, like realizing your equity more, being a bit more polar in some spots, and maybe a little bit on that. But really, the Tritons, in my mind, the biggest edges are coming from playing well, short average stack, nearing the money, in the money, nearing the final table. That stuff I think it's just so important. I mean, you're sitting there with like 16 big blinds, 15 off the money in a 50K, or maybe in a 30K where there's more people. And like the average stack is 14 big blinds. That's a completely different game than what we're typically used to online or what you're used to in other formats when you're like, okay, I have 16 bigs. I'm going to just jam the cutoff with whatever, ace 10 off, and it's like, well, no, like you need to imagine your 16 is like 24 right now. You know what I mean? You actually play no jams in the cutoff nearing the money in this spot because like every chip is worth so much and you're able to put more pressure on with min raises and things like that. So I think that, my focus would be on short stack tournament play pertaining to payout structures.
And then mainly like pre-flop ICM.
Yeah. And then I guess that, the most important, obviously, like if it was somebody that like I was having big pieces of or something like that, like, player pool reads and how different businessmen play at these things is massive for win rate, right? I think that I undervalued that. One thing that you said earlier about going to Vegas and playing live, I really resonated with because the way that people from different countries look and feel is completely different. And the first time I went and played in Asia, I had this guy and I was like, he has to have the nuts. I've never seen somebody act like this without the nuts. And I'm like, dude, like, I can't do this. I can't fold. And I got lucky that like I had a hand that was so good that like I could beat plenty of value. And I was like, I can't do this. Bluff. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, like what is going on? Right. And like the way that they feel emotion is just different than what I'm used to. Americans, when they feel emotion, you feel it in a certain way. Right. But everybody's different, and the way that their body presents is just different. So player pool reads, the way people act, who cares about the money, who cares about the first bullet, who takes pride in being in for 8 bullets. All these things like matter a ton when you're going to play these. So I think if it's somebody that like I really, want to do more than a theoretical help, that would be the most useful for somebody like you going to Triton, I think.
All right. Well, if I'm ever gonna make the switch, I will make sure to give you a call. This seems like valuable coaching sessions.
Sounds good.
Adam, maybe from a performance side, like one thing actually personally I always struggle with if I do play a live MTT is like, for example, food around the grind. Like I said, trying to optimize your sleep. It's always very hard, right? You're trying to be as focused, sharp as possible, but you also have to be in bed an hour later so you can try to get as much sleep in. Could you maybe give like some performance tips around the series?
Yeah, I think routine is important. So figuring out what time you're going to be sleeping, what time you're waking up, having some sort of structure to your morning. Try to control as many variables as you can. Whether it's getting some light outside. I'd say food's quite simple, but people just don't really think about it enough. Like literally choose what times you should be eating, what foods work well for you. Generally less is better than more. So if like Justin says, somebody doesn't eat when he's grinding these long stops, because it's often better to not be over kind of saturated with food. So yeah, I think the main thing is create a structure for yourself and keep it as familiar as possible. Because often when you're going to a live stop, like there's lots of new things happening, lots of things out of your control. Try to control as many variables as you can. If you can't control your sleep, okay, no worries. What can you control? And try to create a kind of structure that works. And I think for yourself, Rene, if you were going into a live stop like this, the main thing would be expectations. I'd just be working on, look, expectations, we need to get those in check, because I think a lot of players who don't play live often enough, they go in, they're all giddy, like, yeah, let's go, going to play amazing, going to get some good results. And majority of the time, you're just going to get a punch in the face, your money's gone, and back home you go, and it feels a bit demoralizing. So I think for players who don't play live often, especially tournaments, just like destroy expectations. It's not going to work out well for you. Let's get those down to 0 and then go there, have a good time, have fun, and yeah, just acknowledge that you're going to make mistakes. Oh yeah, another thing, you'll make mistakes. That'll be another thing to work on. Acknowledging it's not out of your comfort zone. Mistakes are going to be everywhere. So I've really destroyed all your joy going into that series, but hopefully when things don't go well, it will help a bit.
Great advice.
All right, cool. I want to just go into a rapid fire now with you, Justin. So the kind of rules here are basically just answer with whatever comes to mind. It can be a short answer or we can expand a little bit, but basically when I say the question, just whatever comes to mind, you'll just quickly respond.
Okay.
All right, cool. First question. What's the most overrated concept in poker?
MDF.
One trait every elite poker player has in common.
Grit.
The biggest lie poker players tell themselves.
I don't care about the results.
What's your biggest live poker holy shit moment?
My first Triton FT.
What made it that way?
Just playing for almost 2 million, Phil Ivey, Dan Smith, Jason Kuhn, so many like elite players, and then just like the status of Triton for the first time, you're like, this is unbelievable. But like the way the production value, everything that goes into it, and then you come out into the smoke and the table, and you're sitting with just like the best players of the last, you know what I mean, like forever. I think that was a moment that like when reflecting on, I'm like, I cannot believe I didn't freak the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like in the moment, I felt okay. I was like I'm more studied than these guys right now. Like once again, I'm leaning into those things that I feel like I can find my edge somewhere. But I look back at that one and I'm like, that was crazy. You know, like that was an insane moment. And yeah, luckily those I've had more of those since that it doesn't feel as insane now. But yeah, that was one. That was the one that came to mind.
Of that lineup, who was the most intimidating to play against?
Ivy.
When you're on a downswing, deep in a downswing, what's your internal dialogue?
keep going, trust yourself, keep going, trust yourself. Something like that.
What emotion costs poker players the most money?
Pride. Is that an emotion?
Yeah,
That count?
that definitely counts, yeah. Favorite non-poker book that has helped improve your life or poker performance?
Can't Hurt Me, the David Goggins book.
Yeah, fits in nicely with the war mode from the start.
Yeah.
What's your best investment you've made in your poker career for under $100?
Oh, well.
Notebooks. I like to write stuff down. I think that's a lost thing a little bit too with the public solver era. Like, you should be filling notebooks at any level of poker. Notes on players, whatever. You can type it later, but I think like notebooks and pen, like, always be writing things.
Amazing. So for you, do you then select your best notes from your notepad and then type them up? Have you got like some sort of system from going from a kind of written format to a digital format?
I would say that I am a bit lazier going to digital. I don't mind picking up an old notebook. When it comes to like player notes and things, I make sure those all go digital. So if it's a player note, it always goes digital. If it's a theory note or something I feel or something I'm thinking, I'm okay leaving that in a notebook.
Nice. Probably a dying skill these days to actually write things down. So
Yeah, maybe.
it's a good reminder. Yeah. All right, great stuff. That's the rapid fire done. I'm now going to go into some signature questions and reflecting back on your career and trying to take some lessons from yourself and for the audience. So for yourself, what would you say is the most important lesson poker has taught you?
I would say that, like, you can do anything in life, you know? You can achieve anything that you put your mind to. There is no limitation. It's only in your head, you know? It's if you really want something and you want it with everything that's in you, you'll get there, you know?
How do you instill that belief in someone who maybe doesn't have that? Is that something you've got to, as you mentioned earlier, prove to yourself with repetitions, doing hard stuff, keep showing up? How does someone get to where you're at in terms of believing that's true for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, the fake it till you make it thing, I think, is important. Finding small wins, winning just small things. You know, if you feel like you can't run a 10-mile race, okay, run to the other house next door. Run a lap around the track. Just keep going forward. You know, just like keep going. And like, I think that people will always shock themselves on, you know, this is some other quote I'm stealing, but on like how little it feels like happens in 1 year and how much it feels like happens in 10 or whatever the kind of quote is, where you can achieve so much in the long term. And like, if you're not naturally that way, I think that's just important to just build on it over and over. Small wins. Okay, if you feel like you're lazy in the morning, wake up 5 minutes earlier for 20 days straight. Do 5 push-ups for 20 days straight and then 10, right? Like it'll just always build something grander.
Yeah, I love that. I think the kind of progressive overloads, always doing a little bit more, pushing yourself, works in like any domain, whether that's the gym, whether that's with work ethic and anything you're doing. I also think it's good to pair that with something where you shatter your beliefs, where you literally take on a challenge where, like that guy who can't do the 10K, you sign up for a marathon in 6 months' time, and now he's just all in. I think there's something about setting a challenge that just seems so big that can have a really powerful impact on your mind forever, because you realize the mind tells you a constant story. I can do this, I can't do that. And we just believe the mind over and over. If you stop the mind and go, right, I can do that, and you sign up for it, it has this really powerful way of blasting through a lot of those smaller checkpoints. So for myself, I remember the David Goggins, good example. I did the 4x4x48 challenge, which is you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. At this time, I was only doing the gym. I hadn't run a 5K for the best part of a year. And I really wasn't in shape for running. And I heard it on the Monday and it was starting on the Wednesday. And I was like, my mind instantly went, I could never do that because it's just crazy. And that's when, why not? And I remember I was entertaining the thought long enough for it to plant a seed. I thought, I'll just do the first 4K and then I'll see what I feel after it. And on the first 4K, I did it and I finished at my local gym. And I saw 3 people I knew. And like, Adam, you've been for a run. You never run. I was like, yeah, I'm just doing this 4x4x48 challenge. Started explaining the challenge to them. Like, oh, this is really cool. Keep us updated. I'm like, oh my God, I've just doubled down on this now. And then over the course of that, you run 48 kilometers over the course of 2 days. You basically wake up every 4 hours. So the hard ones are midnight, 4 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and then you just go through for 2 days straight. But through that, one, it taught me how resilient you can be, like to challenges, but also how much you can do that you feel like you can't. So when I finished that, my body was a bit beaten up, but I didn't get injured, which was a great thing. But also I felt like my mind had just went, I've got so many stories, and for the probably next year, to be honest, every time my mind stopped me and said, Adam, you can't do that, I create a seed of doubt and go, well, can you? Or you just decided that you can't. So I think it's really good to have belief shattering stuff. For yourself, Justin, anything you've done that's kind of been out of your comfort zone massively? I'm guessing even doing the Triton, it's at times might have felt that way. That felt like a big jump when you maybe weren't ready.
Not one thing comes to mind, but I think that it's just about picking new things all the time. Like I loved it when you said like one hard thing a day. Like I went through a time where, I mean, this sounds a little cliche or whatever, but I would always say that like when I wake up, my feet are on the floor in 10 seconds. Because I felt like I was just like, people were like, you wake up, your phone's near your bed, you check your social media or whatever. It's like, what am I doing? Like, am I really going to waste my life away like scrolling Twitter? You know, so I kind of had this rule where I was like, okay, if I wake up, my feet are on the floor in 10 seconds. Because I felt like if I was like, okay, I need to get up and do something or whatever, it felt too grand. It's so easy to break that, you know? But if it's so simple as, okay, my feet go from bed to floor, I was like, well, I can do that, right? And then it became this like kind of a build again where I was like, okay, well, how about finish a cold shower within a minute? I'm like 10 seconds, feet on the floor, ice cold shower, or as cold as you can go, and get in there within a minute, within 2 minutes. Can I do that? And so then it just kind of became this thing of you know, trying to do difficult things just over and over and just proving to yourself that it's not that hard. This little voice in your head is just lying to you the whole time. And one note on that is that like this information and knowledge thing, right? There's so much information, but we're starving for knowledge. Like it's so incredible how much information is out there that you can go and learn from. Like you can literally go learn from some of the greatest athletes or businessmen or whatever of all time, speaking publicly. When at any point in history could you have done that, right? Like you can listen to Kobe and he talks about, oh, well, you obviously, everybody has this thing in their mind that like when things are hard or when you're on mile, you know what I mean, 10 of the race you're doing, it's like, do I need to do this? Like, do I have to do this? Like, does it really matter? Like, I'm tired, my body hurts, whatever. Like fighting against that, like human instinct is just so important and just showing that like your mind is so much stronger than your doubts and the things that are pushing you back. I think like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think getting reps as well with that kind of like doing stuff long enough. That's why we keep talking about winning the day and doing those kind of daily challenges, because it's not something that you just do once. It's like a constant battle where you put yourself in situations and you show I can do something hard. Then you start to realize that the mind's telling you this is hard, I can't do it, and you override that and do it. It's like boom, rep for me. I beat that day. Certain days you can't. Let's say you go for a 10-mile run around mile 9. You're exhausted. You're there. I can't do it. And in that moment, you couldn't rise to it. Even then, there's the stuff to take. So yeah, I think it's really good to build reps with yourself that you can do hard things. So when you do face challenges, you've got that kind of toolkits to be able to push back against it. Because I think a lot of people who do struggle, they just haven't built the reps for themselves. You can't cheat the process. It's like you can't get the knowledge. You got the information. You can't get the knowledge without doing the experience. I think a lot of challenges, you've just got to go through them. If you look at resilient people, the most resilient people on the planet, whether it's David Goggins or someone similar, it's not through studying, it's not through learning stuff. It's like doing hard stuff over and over. So that voice gets very active in their minds and they find ways to push back against it. So yeah, I think it's a lot of practical things. And anyone who's struggling with this, like as you mentioned, start small. What you said as well reminds me of the Mel Robbins has got a rule called the 5-second rule, where basically anytime you think about doing something hard, just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. So it like kind of stops the mind from overthinking.
Wow,
so
yeah.
I think that kind of your 10-second rule reminded me of that kind of concept of just don't overthink it. Often your mind, the more you think about it, will find reasons to go for the path of least resistance, what feels comfortable. So yeah, I think trying to find ways to get yourself to do hard things. So yeah, hopefully that motivates someone to at least do something hard today.
Yeah.
So for you, like there's a lot of players who will be listening to this, who will be maybe relating to you on your early part of your journey and go, wow, I would love to replicate your success, but people are going to go different ways and not many of them will be able to replicate that, to be honest. So for yourself, what do you think has been the greatest contributor to your success that's allowed you to separate from other players who started on the same journey?
I think desire. Desire was big. I think that, you know, I went through a time that was pretty impactful with like, you know, we don't need to get to it in full, but like the American kind of poker player, like cheating stuff. And I think that it kind of really put a chip on my shoulder and my desire went through the roof because I was getting mixed up and I felt like I didn't do anything wrong. And And, you know, like I think that the desire, everybody says they want something, but they don't really want it that bad. They don't want it bad enough to like skip the night out on a Saturday. You know, when I really felt like I wanted it was like I skipped New Year's to study. I was like, I'm gonna skip this today. I want to study. I'm gonna play online. I haven't played cash in a while. Let me like grind cash and go study. And I was like, that was such a big funny thing for me, because like that was when the competition started in my head at a really high level. I was like, I'm gonna bury these guys. Like I'm gonna want it so much more than them. And I think that people that say they want it, they just don't want it that bad. They don't want to make the sacrifices. They don't really want to chase what their goals are, and that's okay too, right? If you don't want to be you know, a super elite player or whatever, like that's fine. If you want to play for the money and have a good life with the family, like amazing, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But spending time figuring out why you want it so bad and leaning into that in big moments, I think is just so hyper important. Yeah, it's so hyper important. I think that desire to really reach and to prove myself, you know, as a live player, I was like, okay, these guys think I was doing some shady stuff online. Like, perfect. I'm gonna go beat them for every single dollar live. I don't care. Put a tournament anywhere in the world. I'll travel. I don't mind, you know. And so I think that like that desire and the chip was really what kind of set me apart from some guys that I felt like we were kind of maybe the same level in 2021, and then, you know, 4 or 5 years later, I feel like I just surpassed pretty much all of them, everybody that I was the same level at.
With that desire, do you feel like it's something you can fuel in terms of you can create more of it? Or do you feel like a lot of that desire is coming from some sort of deep drive that's personal to you? From your experience, do you feel like it's something that you can cultivate more of easily, or it's something that you've got to kind of get more in tune with your own drives?
Yeah, I think it's both, but I think that you can definitely supplement it. You know, I remember that I really liked this YouTube video when I was a goalkeeper of like just like these amazing saves, and it was like to cool music, and it sounds a little bit silly, but like I just know that when I watched that video, it made me want to go be an amazing goalkeeper more. Like there's so much. I think that we overvalue our own intelligence in a lot of ways. We're pretty simple creatures. Like Twitter is smarter than my brain. Like it will stimulate me in some ways, and mostly negative. And so like the stuff around us, everything that occurs is big stimulus. And if you want to stimulate motivation and growth, you need to surround yourself with that. You can't like there's an old thing that I think, you know, it has been happening in poker for forever. But like if you're surrounding yourself with a group of people that watch, I've said Chidwick a bunch, that it's any top player, but if you're in a group that watches the hand that Chidwick played, and you're like, LOL, he scorched it. Like, get out of that group, right? You're surrounding yourself with these people that like aren't doing it the right way. They're like, if I see Chidwick and my immediate thought is he scorched it, that's on you. That's your own supplement. He's like, these guys are amazing players. Even if he did make a huge mistake, the process needs to be, okay, why did he do that? What did he think would happen? Was it a true mistake, or was it trying to adjust too hard? Like what did that happen, and what does that mean about his game? Does that mean that he has a leak that I can exploit in similar spots, or is this something one-off, right? That stimulus is completely different than like, LOL, what an idiot. Like he just scorched $1 million, right? And so I think that like your surroundings and the stimulus that you're putting in is just so incredibly important. And having groups around you, people around you that believe in you, that believe you can do anything, that push you. I think that all those things are incredible stimulus to push yourself in a direction to have high belief.
Yeah, and I think we need that, right? We need some sort of pushes on us to do more, to be better, because there's so many pulls in the wrong direction. There's so much stimulus, there's so much path of least resistance. We just grab your phone and just be stimulated all day long. It's really hard to go, right, I'm going to sacrifice all these short-term pleasures for the long-term vision of me being a better version. If that's just like your kind of thought, it's really hard to just keep pushing through that over and over. I think if you're in the right environment, you have the right people around you, one, it normalizes it. It normalizes pushing through stuff and doing hard stuff and being an elite performer. And two, sometimes when you're down and you're in the pits sort of thing, like Jason Little did with you, Jonathan Little, sorry, you get that kind of push when you need it. So I want to pick you up to say, keep going the course. We can do this. You're on the right path. So yeah, I think your environment's so important. And for you, how much of your environment did you kind of consciously cultivate, and how much just like kind of happened naturally? I say this because I feel like some people are on the path, like they think they have to have their environment, the people around them all figured out. But from my experience, things often just come through naturally being aligned with a path. Like if you're all in on something, like things just start coming towards you, whether it's like attraction based or what, you're kind of carving a path. And then over time, you pick up the right influences, the right people, the right environmental influences. So for you, how much of your environment was shaped through conscious decisions? I'm going to have these people around me, and how much just flowed naturally?
Yeah, I would say almost all of it flowed naturally. I mean, there's a couple of times throughout my career where I was like, okay, like I would love to like speak with that guy about poker a little bit, you know, and there were some things that maybe might push me to do something social that I didn't want to do. And I think I've pushed back about that because like there's a lot of negative that comes in like having weird motives. Like I've never felt good about being like, oh, a bunch of rich people are going to this thing. Like maybe I'll have good networking things. Let me go to it. Like that's just a gross feeling to me. I don't think it's beneficial. Whereas like every organic relationship that I've found through poker, kind of like what you're saying, like has always felt like it's been a huge benefit in my life. I think that one of the biggest things that Jonathon helped teach me early on that I kind of brought through to other relationships is like just one, surround yourself with people that are better than you and try to provide as much value as possible. And I think that second one is important and kind of lost, especially with maybe our generation that like, oh, what can he do for me? It's like, what are you talking about? But like, why does that matter? Why does it matter what they can do for you? It's all about like, if you can provide value, because then there's this reciprocal nature. So I've never been one to be like, oh, you know, we're doing a money trade, like give me 1% or whatever it was. It's like, dude, just do people favors, do good by people, try to provide as much value you can in whatever way that looks like. And then naturally everything will just kind of like come back and people want to help people. People want to teach people. People want to have, you know, good moments in these things. So like if you're enjoyable to be around and you try to provide value, I think that it's like very natural that you will cultivate a good, positive environment.
Very well said. For you, what's your definition of success, and how has that changed over the years?
The word that came to mind was longevity. I think that it's easy when you're really growth oriented to reach near the top, but it's a way different skill set to stay there and to like keep going. And I think that's what I've struggled with the past year or two. Really like this year, one of my mental battles is like, okay, like how do I keep the motivation? Like, why am I doing this? What's kind of going on? Like why I feel like I'm studying a little bit less than normal. Is that, you know, because I'm losing motivation? Like, am I getting worse? Are people catching up on me? Like all these types of things. I think that, yeah, my goal now is just longevity, sustainability. I want to be able to continue my process in a more optimized way such that I'm spending less time than I had to early on because I'm a stronger player. But can I continue to improve and can I continue to push? Because I still feel like I just haven't reached where I want to reach. You know what I mean? Like I still skip high stakes events all the time. I go to Tritons and everybody goes and plays the 150K and I go and study and wait and see if I can prepare for the main event. Right. So I still feel like there's more to go. And if, you know, if I really felt I was the best player in the world, I wouldn't skip events. But I don't rebuy as much as these guys. I don't fire as much of the high stakes. I might stay at the win and say going to the Bahamas. Like these are things that kind of tear at me. You know what I mean? That like hurts me. And it means that I have like further to go. And so like that's kind of the motivation that I want is like just keep going and can I have longevity?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic as well in terms of what it takes to get to the top and then what it takes to stay at the top. You look at sports, you look at things like boxing is a really good example. It's very hard to stay as the champion because you've got all the kind of hunger and drive to get to the champion. Then once you're there, everyone wants to battle for your spot. You've got all these hungry young people who want to knock you off. And it's only a small set of people who kind of the goats of their kind of generation who are able to stay at the top for long. And you realize very quickly, like longevity is probably the hardest thing. Like getting to the top is one thing. There'll be lots of people who get to the top, but there's only very few who stay at the top. So yeah, I want to kind of lean into this a little bit in terms of what is the kind of key factors for you for longevity. So you mentioned something to prove. I think it's always good. Like if you've still got things to achieve, things to prove, then you keep that kind of hunger. But for you, what have been some of the transitions you've had to make from getting to the top and now trying to stay there long term?
Yeah, I think just like checking myself in different ways. Like comfort is such a killer. You know what I mean? Like when you have success, like I'm so lucky and grateful that I have like an amazing life. It doesn't matter how poker goes, that, I'm still going to have an amazing life and full of friends and like plenty of like resources and freedom in these things. And so like, I think that I have to be very careful. And what I've had to try to push back on is that comfort. What can I do to push back on this comfort? Because man, is it easier to lay in bed a little bit longer when you've had some more success than you had when you were super hungry, right? That hunger is like, it's so easy for comfort to kill that. And so I think that for me, like what I have to push back on is my self-talk and my small habits, that I do things that are still uncomfortable. Just because I used to take cold showers doesn't mean I'm some hard ass. Like I hurt my trap the other day, and it was really uncomfortable. And I was having a hard time sitting and moving it at all. And it feels better today. But my brother was like, it's funny, like David Goggins would just go see how many pull-ups he can do. You know what I mean? Like he would tear his trap and be like, I think I can still do 100. You know what I mean? Like he would just go and do something really hard. And I think that like when you're comfortable, it's like, oh, well, my girlfriend's gonna take care of me and patch me up and like give me ice and cook dinner, and like I'll watch a movie and life's pretty good and it's hurting, so I don't want to study as hard. Like comfort is just a killer. So I think that I have to just keep fighting against that.
See, I think what you said there was so true in terms of comfort kills hunger. I think it's something that we all need to kind of consciously push back on. It feels like comfort wins by default. So if we're not conscious, we're not thinking about how to do hard stuff, we're going to, over time, going to lose our hunger, lose our drive, lose our kind of ability to perform at our best. So yeah, I think this conversation's covered that from many angles, but yeah, I really like that. Comfort kills hunger was a really good tagline I'll take away there. So what do you wish you knew about poker when you first started out? Obviously, getting into poker, it's quite like glamorous in terms of what you feel like it could be. And then life hits you or poker hits you with reality. What's something that you wish you knew when you started?
I would say that it's hard because I feel like I'm so happy with what I knew and what I know now. You know what I mean? Like the journey of that all. But I guess that, just how important like the present moment is. I think that early on it's so easy to have these like ideas of grandeur of the future, or like the way that you look back on the past. It's like, you know, guys that played a high level of soccer at 22 sometimes live in those moments the rest of their life. Like they're 40 years old and they're just like reminiscing on how it was when they were 22. And now I think that I realize that just like every year it gets better. Um, I love all the different present moments, and that, worrying about the future, thinking about the past, like that stuff just, it will never bring you joy, in my mind. So I think that I wish I knew that more early on in the journey, just to be present and enjoy every chapter, because living by myself and grinding 200 an hour I look back on it with a bunch of joy, So I think that that's something I kind of wish I had more maturity on early on.
What's the hardest thing about being a professional poker player for you?
The hardest thing, I guess, the things in life that you miss. You don't get to work a 9-to-5 job where if there's a birthday party you want to go to, it's on Saturday and you get to make it. Your schedule is a bit more sporadic, and I feel like it's definitely taken away time with family and friends and loved ones and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's probably been the hardest, is just like the isolation, the loneliness of the time when you're traveling by yourself, and the kind of things that you have to miss.
What's the nicest thing about being a poker player for you? What do you feel like is the thing that really makes you feel I'm so lucky to be a poker player?
I'm going to give you a little bit of a funny answer, I think, but it's the standard. Like my brother's a doctor, and he went to school for undergraduate, and then he's 22, and then you go to medical school, and then he's 26, and then you go to residency, and then you have fellowship or whatever else you have, and like you have to spend 12 years of working like an animal to like become a doctor, right? And like my favorite thing about poker is that like the bar just isn't that high. Like you have to dedicate an entire lifetime to becoming one of the best soccer players in the world. But I really do believe that like if you work hard and you dedicate 5 years, 10 years to poker, like you can do pretty incredible things in the industry. And what that also means is that the ceiling is lower, right? If you're the best soccer player in the world, it's a different lifestyle than poker players. But I think that, my favorite thing is that, the bar is just not that high. You can grind hard and you can achieve a lot of amazing things through hard work and dedication in a much faster time than really almost any career.
Yeah. Do you feel with that the ceiling is somewhat limited in poker? Do you feel like there is a ceiling that can be reached that's maybe not as advanced? I'm seeing that from the context of, let's say, sports where maybe something like chess, where to get a grandmaster level, you might need 10 years of ridiculous dedication to get to that level. Do you feel like in poker it's not as hard to get to the top, or do you feel like the ceiling we're just so far off as poker players? It's still so new. It's still, the ceiling's just miles away.
I think the first one, but like in chess, I'm not even sure if an adult can become a grandmaster. You know what I mean? Like, I almost think like maybe there's somebody out there, but for the most part, grandmasters start when they're 5 years old and they become amazing chess players, right? In poker, obviously, because you're gambling, like you start much later in life. And so I think that it's not like soccer, but tennis, whatever, like you're playing as a 5-year-old. I mean, if a bunch of 5-year-olds were playing poker, they would be the best in the world in 20 years. Like if there was a culture of that. And so I think that like the standard just isn't that high. The guys that have been at the top for the last 10, 15 years, like there's a lot of comfort in what those guys have been able to achieve. And I don't think that the level of play is exceptionally high in the industry.
Yeah, just imagine a little culture of 5-year-old poker players, a little poker school. Very quite interesting because, as you mentioned, in chess, pretty common, right? Like you hear every chess story starts with a young prodigy who's playing ridiculous amounts of 5. You don't really hear the 5-year-old poker prodigy. So maybe they're in training right now. Maybe we'll meet them when they're 15, 20 years old. But yeah, I know what you're saying as well. Like there's an element of learning when you're young where you can kind of almost like build in so many ways of thinking that may be harder to get when you're an adult, especially for certain things. So yeah, very interesting to think like the bar is not that high. Because I think a lot of people listening, watching will feel like the bar is high, especially with solvers. And we kind of get told that poker is like this kind of unbeatable game over time and it's getting harder and harder. But then you hear people like you speak and you're like, no, this is like, it's easier than ever. Not easier than ever, but the ceiling's still very low. And anyone who's coming in now can still get the top. So let's say there's a talented player listening. He's early in his career and he's super ambitious. He's got that desire you had. He's willing to go into war mode. How long do you think, with the right guidance, obviously a lot of factors that would have to go his way, how long do you feel like it could take him to get to the top of the highest stakes?
He's already good.
He's already good. He's good, but he's playing low stakes, hasn't got much of a bankroll. He's got all the raw ingredients, but he hasn't proven it to himself fully, and he hasn't got the results.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, 3 to 7 years is my guess. And I think that the people for the bar being high, like the best players are still amazing. I don't want to take away from a lot of like the best in the world, right? But if you just like go watch a Triton final table, go watch 10 of them, run every single hand, look through and think deeply about every single hand. The game's hard. The game is a very difficult game. It's not easy to execute at a high level under pressure. And I think that the guys that are doing that have been doing that for 10 years. And there's a reason, right? Because there's certain guys that have kind of figured that stuff out. And so I think that in that regard, like being a winner in a live 5K just isn't that tough. You know, you can, if you're already a good player, like you can do that in a year, right? If a year with guidance and you know, the desire to want to go do well in it, like a 3 to 5K BI it's just extremely beatable.
Going forward, present day, what are some of your goals? What are some things you still want to achieve? You mentioned you still feel like you need to prove yourself. What areas do you feel like you would need to have success to validate that?
Yeah, it's tough. What comes to my mind doesn't make me that happy, honestly. Like what comes to my mind is that I need to win everything. Like I need to win. I have a second, third, and fourth in Triton. I don't have a Triton trophy. I don't have a live WSP bracelet. I don't have an EPT title. I mean, I have a star, a Poker Stars title, but not like a main event or a 10K high roller. Now I know that that's not the healthiest thing, and so I need to work through that stuff, because like what success is from here, I'm not sure, but the way that my brain feels is that success is winning everything. It's going to every stop and winning, learning PLO, beating PLO, learning mix, beating mix. Like I just want to beat everything. I think I can do it, and I know it's not the healthiest at the current moment, but I think that I'll figure that out as I go.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can kind of tie too many things together. I feel like sport, poker, they're often not going to lead to fulfillment. Like that kind of nice, satisfied feeling. There's always a hunger for more. There's always I'm not quite good enough. I need to do more. I need to compete. I need to get better, which for some people might lead to a unhealthy state of mind. But I think obviously for yourself, like you've obviously leaned into this a lot, you realize like there's so much goodness that comes from that just wanted to be better, wanted to do more, wanted to achieve more. At some point, maybe you're 60, 70 years old, you look back on your career and you'll be able to chill a bit more, spend more time with your family and be more relaxed. But I feel like when you're in that season of wanting to be the best, to prove yourself, the desire is high, like just really maximizing that chapter. I think there's only good things that will come from when you look back on it in the future. And yeah, you'll definitely not regret that you went all in on something, that you give it your all. So yeah, I think it's one of those things. If you think short-term happiness, then yeah, maybe it wouldn't be fully aligned, though there's kind of argument you could. But yeah, I think it's a good thing to just be in the moment of doing what you're doing. And yeah, just know like the pieces later on when you look back will most likely align to a nice narrative, or your mind can create a nice narrative around it.
Yeah, and even the winning, like one thing that I just kind of thought about when you were saying that is that the trophies matter to me, right? Like they just do. I lied to myself for a long time saying like it doesn't matter, like I'm gonna print my win rate and whatever, but like they do matter. I do want to have success at a very high level, but also wins. Like I'm not in the best shape of my life. I really don't want my physical health to have been in the best shape when I was a kid at 20 years old. Right. So like that's something that I can find wins in, that I want to find wins in. I want to start a family and find wins there. Right. Be a good father and find wins in that. So I think that like the winning is just like, it doesn't necessarily need to be always trophies, but it needs to contain some trophies, I think.
Yeah, I think it's good to be honest with yourself around that, right? Because the trophy it signifies everything you've worked towards. I think often in poker, especially Rene, you'll relate to this being a cash game player. You want the trophy. You want that kind of medal around your neck. Like I look at like Olympic athletes. I look at Mr. Olympia's just been on, and they get like the pinnacle of you've done it. You've climbed the mountain. There's the trophy. There's the title. There's some sort of closure in that of knowing one, what you're trying to achieve, and if you can achieve it, job done. Where poker doesn't necessarily have that. Obviously now with the Triton and bracelets, there's elements of that. And I think when you're working so hard at something and you just have some sort of validation externally that yes, the work I've done, all the belief I had in myself got me this. And also, when you look back on your career, you can tell the stories around you got this bracelet, this trophy. There's something like nice. It's almost like wrapping a nice bow around it, like a nice cherry on top of the cake. It doesn't need to be there, but it's something that would leave a nice feeling. I think it's good to acknowledge that's a real thing, and yeah, just be good with that, and just to search for those as well, because it will create that hunger and desire.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny because like when my mind switched, I was like, okay, so I don't care about winning titles. So like I'm dedicating my life to this. Like, what the fuck do you mean? If I just like get 5th and 7th a bunch, like I'm just like, oh, I tried my hardest. Like, congrats. Like, absolutely not. Like, that's awful. I'm choosing to dedicate so much of my life to being the best tournament player I can be right now. The best poker player I can be. Like, trophies are the accolade that do, represent that. And it doesn't mean that like I was the best player in that tournament. But by bringing my best over and over in the long term, it's just going to lead to trophies, right? And if it doesn't, then something's wrong.
Yeah, I think it ties into what we talked about earlier in terms of giving your all to the short term, giving your all to try and win, to try and be the best. And then at the end, just going, doesn't really matter. So I think like if you don't get the trophies, like in years in the future, once you've kind of finished that chapter, you'll look back and go, actually, the trophies weren't as important as I thought they were. But in that moment, they were life or death. And I needed those trophies and I wanted them. I think that's kind of paradox is what we need to balance with.
Yeah. Well said. Totally agree.
So how do you see the future of poker, and how do you see yourself in it? What's changing at the moment, and how do you see yourself evolving with it?
The high stakes are moving outside of America, I would say, for the most part. So that's going to be a little bit interesting to see how that is affected. And then America, I think that beating the like 2K to 10K price point is a really good focus. 1K to 10K price point. Like there's still a ton of value in that, and I still find a lot of joy in navigating big fields and things like that. Obviously there's some good 25Ks in America, but I think that in general, as Americans, we might just be playing a much lower ABI in the States, and then you go to Macau or maybe Dubai in the future, or Jeju, and that's kind of where the super high roller action just is. I think it's really tough to run 8 really good 100Ks a year. And I think that it seems like we're kind of moving into a direction where the best 100Ks are just going to be at Triton, wherever they decide to run. And so we might end up, just playing smaller in America, playing huge outside of America, and then, really focusing on optimizing that travel life and trying to play my best. Maybe just go spend a month in Asia if there's 2 stops in a row. Like maybe I go play an APT or there's just so much growth that's happening in different parts of the world. And as laws and taxes and things change, like just have to adapt accordingly.
Does that create a big challenge for American players? Let's say you're playing a lot smaller in America, then you've got to jump into these massive Triton stops. Is that kind of big jump going to create kind of a challenge in terms of going from a smaller stake to a bigger stake? And how do you yourself might not fall in this category, but how do you see players, American players in particular, having to juggle that?
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing. I mean, we felt that when online poker was much smaller in America, right? Like, I feel a little bit empty that I'm not battling some of these really good online players anymore. Like, I played them at 400 ABI in 2020 or whatever. I went and lived in Mexico, but I wasn't ever like playing high stakes online. I was playing high stakes US online, right? Like I was playing the biggest stuff in the US. And so not having that, I think, does make a difference. But skill sets just start to shift, and that's where I think that like it kind of comes back, where I think that the best online players right now are spending a lot of time on PKOs. They're spending a lot of time on bounties. Like ICM with small antes is just so much different than big blind ante. When you play 3-handed with a big blind ante, the game is completely different. And so I think that like the way that I feel is that maybe the American guys might just be sharper live because I'm not focused on PKOs. I'm probably pretty poor at PKOs. Like I feel comfortable playing them in America at a $600 tournament or whatever, but I'm not playing like 5K GG PKO. And so I think that, part of that like claws at me a little bit and hurts. But it also allows me to, and other American players, to just focus more on those actual tournaments. Like playing online PKOs just really doesn't help you for Triton that much. If I watch every single hand that's ever been streamed on Triton and take notes, that's probably way better for me, right? So that's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah, maybe it allows you to prepare for those Triton stops as well a bit more because they're going to be a big part of your year. Obviously, the hard challenge is that a lot of your kind of results for the whole year will ride on your results at the Triton. So finding mental ways to be okay with that. Obviously, you'll sell a lot of action, but in terms of how your year goes, there'll be a big swing with those stops, which will be a thing to navigate. But yeah, like we said as well, the opportunity to just specialize in your specific format rather than getting too caught up in other games. It sounds like it could be a benefit there.
Yeah,
All right,
on the business side, sorry, just to add, like the business side you're talking about is also just extremely important. I think that like I work with some online players, and like that is hyper important. You need to control your ABI. Like I don't have $40 million to be like, oh, whatever, 100K, like fire, right? So I think controlling your ABI and controlling your expectations, kind of like you're saying, so that this week of tournaments doesn't feel like it actually makes up. Like, because it is, you're right, it's easy. It's easy for it to feel like it is so important in these 10 days because you're putting in $1 million in buy-ins, or whatever, 600K in buy-ins. But I think that like leveling out your ABI, sorting out your business stuff properly such that you still have good upside, you're still taking proper risk, but you're not putting too much emphasis on only the 400Ks you play a year, because like you need to be focusing more on investing in your highest win rate spots. And if you aren't being able to have all of yourself, or like if you don't have a situation with proper upside in the 10K in America after playing Triton, something's wrong with your incentives.
Yeah, I bet that's quite a tricky kind of balance to get right. I feel like from a performance avenue, it's got to feel like the Olympics. It's got to feel like that war mode, got to take down the titles. But on a financial side, you should try and find a way to balance that so it doesn't feel like it swings your whole year in crazy ways. And yeah, as you mentioned, I think the hard bit is after a Triton stop, can you get back to your normal grind? Can you just grind out? If you can't, it's probably too big of a jump, or you haven't kind of balanced things correctly.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, we had a great conversation. We're just about to hit the 3-hour mark. For you, what would you like the main takeaway to be for our audience listening?
I would say that, just that like belief in hunger, I think is like the biggest takeaway from the mindset side. Like I really do believe, I know there's variance, I know there's luck, I know these things are of course true, but every time you have a piece of you that wants to be like, oh, that guy had a successful business because he got lucky, or that guy's a good poker player because he ran hot in the Bahamas, like whatever. Like, I think that every time that comes, hone it back in and just focus on yourself, focus on your belief. Win every single day at something, and you're just going to be able to achieve things that other people don't think are possible for themselves.
Amazing. Such a great conversation. Thank you for your time, Justin. Really appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
What a great conversation that was. Thank you, Justin. Adam, main takeaways of our conversation today?
Yeah, there was so many there that I could dive into. The way the conversation started around war modes, killer instincts, that elite performer mindset was really fascinating to me. And Justin took us on a deep dive into what it really means to bring out your best. And I think that people underestimate what it takes to be a high performer in elite environments. And for Justin, it was all about this kind of single-focused, going to war. I'm not there to make friends. If I go to live stop, I want my room, I want the casino, I want to play, grind, study, nothing else. And switching into this kind of mindset, which obviously he doesn't function there all the time, but there's certain times where you want to be able to flip that switch. You mentioned that killer instinct, which I think is so important, where you've got to want to win. You've got to want to do your best and to be able to tap into that. So yeah, I think Justin really shared how he's able to have that mindset of just being a high performer. And yeah, hopefully people listening can relate to themselves what their kind of own version of war mode would look like and which times of year they want to turn it on. Next thing was about desire and belief. You kind of paired these well throughout the conversation. Desire to want to be the best, that hunger to want to strive and be a high performer, and then that belief. You mentioned kind of fake it till you make it, but like believing that he could be the best. And even when he didn't quite have enough evidence to back that up, every single day, he just tried to do stuff that showed that he's on the right track. And he just knew over time, if he keeps getting better, keeps improving, that he can get to where he needs to and get those long-term goals, which kind of ties in with another concept that came up, which was win the day, win each day and getting 1% better. So when you have that belief, like kind of fake it till you make it mindset of, I want to get better. And each day you're trying to win your days and get 1% better than you were, to learn, to improve over time. Like that belief is backed up by evidence. It's getting like a kind of a stack of evidence that you are on track, that you are becoming who you need to. I think Justin's story really showed us like how that looks practically in terms of having the belief, having the desire, but also how to show up. I think sometimes we can overcomplicate or get too fixated on the big goals, when in reality, like there's a moment in front of you. Can you win it? For Justin, his alarm goes off, or his feet on the floor in 10 seconds. Like sometimes it just comes back to that moment, win it, and yeah, stack that kind of evidence with yourself, which kind of ties in with the last concept I wrote down, which was comfort kills hunger. And we talked about like kind of doing hard things, stepping out your comfort zone. And honestly, this has got to be front of everyone's mind, because we default to comfort, we default to the easy options, and it's so easy to be weak, fragile, not able to do hard things as you get older, because we gravitate to more comfort. So you've got to find ways to literally seek discomfort, to seek challenges, to seek things that feel uncomfortable on an almost daily basis. It doesn't have to be like running a marathon or something crazy. It can just be something hard today. I did something hard today that challenged me, and just really, really lean into that. And he talked about for himself that environment was really important for that as well. Being around high performers, around elite people helps him to push harder. But yeah, I do feel like a recurrent theme was doing hard things and yeah, kind of stepping into discomfort. I think is a real reminder to everyone listening. How about yourself, Rene? What were the main takeaways for you?
Yeah, actually, to add on that as well, I think he was talking about taking like lower buy-in serious, like the raising of the necessity and setting bigger goals. I think he mentioned multiple times taking all the money, right? He was kind of frustrated with himself, like, why am I not crushing these things harder? There's so much out there, right? And it's really easy, like you said, to get complacent and to just hop in and like, yeah, I'm a winner, this field is soft, blah, blah. And then you're not bringing like your A plus game, right? So raising that necessity by setting bigger goals, I think that was also a good one. One thing that I actually also noted down, where he talked about downswings and losing less in those. I think this is a nice perspective switch that I actually also often teach my students to say, every kind of stage you're at poker offers their opportunities. You know, if you're in upswing, your opportunity is to capitalize on that. When you're in a downswing, the opportunity is to get to know more about yourself, how your C game looks, you know, what kind of things tilt you. But also the opportunity is, can I lose less than my peers, right? Because if we zoom out, something that Justin loved to do, right? We heard that many times as well. If we zoom out and we look at 5 years, yeah, if you are able to play less worse, right, and lose less than your peers on downswings, that's going to add to you being a more successful poker player over time. Something that they actually also mentioned at the end that I think is really important to point out. I think you guys talked about chess and how the bar is actually quite low for poker compared to like other fields. He, I think, gave his brother as an example, who had to study 12 years to become a doctor. I think actually the same in chess, man. To become like a chess master, all the time and effort you have to put into it. If you then look at the reward, like if you look on average, how many people make a good living out of chess? I think it's way easier in poker. Like, we often complain about poker variance, but poker is very controllable. I think it's actually very fair. For the most part, you really get what you put in. Now, obviously, there's some people watching that are, that have gotten a little bit unlucky here and there. And it's easy for you to say. But even like with the luck, it's like, can you push through streaks of bad luck, right? Again, it's like the perspective. Instead of seeing it as like a way out or a reason to quit, seeing it as something like a challenge that you have to go through. In terms of technical stuff, I wrote down a bunch of stuff as well. Some things that I can point out. One eye-opening thing for him that he said, if people bluff 1% or less, we should just never bluff catch. It isn't that we should just bluff catch 10% less. I think that was like a big eye-opener for him. We talked a lot about the importance of understanding the why. And with solvers, like breaking things down to really understand that. So we're able to brain solve in-game, right? Instead of trying to memorize. And the reason why people like simplified strategies is because it's easier to memorize. Obviously, if you approach poker from a memorization perspective, yes, you need to keep things simple. But he was like completely against that. And he was more about embracing the complexity. But also for him, it's not complex because he understands the mechanics of the game, right? And the only way we can do that is to play around with the solver. And that's kind of what he talked about. He added a new error, right? I always thought there was pre-solver and post-solver. And he said now pre-solver, post-solver, post or pre-public solver, right? Because public solver made people even lazier, right? You don't have to set stuff up anymore. And that kind of ties back to like, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's the same. I think I gave the idea with like bluff catching. Yeah, just looking up in the solver, you don't learn anything. But if you're actually going to break down the ranges and see, does he actually have enough combos? How often actually should it be right? What's the odds? And I think he gave the example as well, right? Actually making the ranges yourself. That's actually the process where you learn about poker, not just checking a hand into a solver. And last but not least, I wrote down, I think he gave me some tips if I would want to crush Triton. And in general, right, if you want to do well in MTTs, ICM specifically because it was a smaller field. So I think he also mentioned it. What is like a strategic adjustment you made when you start to play smaller fields? ICM was really important. And he said getting reads on VIPs, right? In general, it's very easy to always focus on, okay, let's study the best players because, they're maybe annoying to play against. But especially if you have frequent VIPs, those are the guys you should put most of your time in, or like semi-fish, because there your return of your investment is way higher. And especially if they return quite often, that's where you can pick up a lot of information that can make you a lot of money. So yeah, I mean, we could actually go on. I wrote down so many things, but this was kind of the main things that stood out to us. I want to thank our audience for watching all the way until the end. I want to thank Adam for co-hosting this podcast with me. I want to thank Justin again for coming on, sharing all his wisdom. Shout out to our sponsors, GTO Wizard, Coinpoker. Go check them out. Remember, if you want to learn about the mechanics, as Justin pointed out, it's very important. Mechanics of Poker, if you want to work with me and Adam, check out the link below, mechanicsofpoker.com, and apply to our coaching program. And I will see you guys in the next episode.